Chapter 1037. There was no doubt that this was an extremely ruthless criminal. But judging from the other party's 3 requests, it wasn't hard for Gao Tian to guess that the other party wanted to use this incident to overturn the case from back then. If they didn't make a big deal out of it, perhaps the truth of the case would forever be shrouded in dark clouds, never to see the light of day again. Thus, after some thought, Gao Tian issued his first instruction. Immediately arrange for the Immortal Arts mobile squad to retreat 10 kilometers away. Yes. Gao Tian was in command. Although the police officers behind him didn't understand why he wanted them to retreat, they could only obey. In fact, 3 minutes ago, the Immortal Arts mobile squad had already come up with a plan to kill the criminal. They would use long-range flying swords and heat-sensing magic treasures to aim at the location of the criminal in the auditorium and kill him with one strike. Even in this situation, the success rate of this method was as high as 80%. As long as they took down the criminal, everything else would be easy to deal with. But it was clear that Gao Tian's goal wasn't just to arrest the criminal. Logically speaking, they could indeed use long-range sniping to kill a criminal who had taken hostages, but the current success rate wasn't 100%. If they failed and angered the criminal, all the students in the auditorium would be out of luck. And another very important point was the criminal's methods. Before this, the criminal had killed people through a network screen many times. Such a strange method proved that the other party's realm was high, and he definitely wasn't an ordinary person. Because of this, they had to be even more cautious. If the other party realized that they were fooling the other party, there might be unpredictable risks. When Gao Tian arrived at the scene, it was still in pretty good order. He handed the storage bag he had brought from the police station to Principal Zhou. There was a total of 3 million yuan in cash inside. After receiving the prisoner's request, Gao Tian immediately ordered the nearby banks to cooperate with him and collected the 3 million yuan as soon as possible. The other party's goal was just to get a plan, and the cash extortion was just a formality. Thus, Gao Tian estimated that the risk of the bank losing 3 million yuan was very small. Of course, even if they did lose money in the end, it would be the insurance company who would pay for it. After entering the cordon, Gao Tian suddenly noticed that Little Silver and the green-furred dog he had seen before were also inside, and he was startled. "Why are you here?" The police officers and teachers on the side were also very helpless. They had already evacuated according to Gao Tian's instructions, and didn't leave anyone at the Golden Core stage or above. But Little Silver was from the Office of Strategic Deception and needed a team leader, and they couldn't order him around at all. "I was just passing by for a bit, and then I just happened to see the commotion," Little Silver said, then whispered to Gao Tian, "Don't worry, the green-furred and I have concealed our auras. They won't be able to tell." Gao Tian, the truth was that Little Silver wasn't worried at all that this murderer would care about it. The other party had asked those at the Golden Core stage and above to evacuate. But Little Silver and Loopy Toad were holy beasts and he was a quasi-holy beast. The ones retreating were humans. What did that have to do with the holy beasts? Principal Zhou Dongye heaved a sigh of relief at Gao Tian's appearance, but the situation in front of him was still extremely tense. "Can you send the video over in half an hour?" Gao Tian asked. Principal Zhou Dongye was taken aback. He nodded as cold sweat trickled down his forehead. "It should be possible, Principal Zhou. I need a definite answer." "Sure." After Principal Zhou Dongye finished speaking, Gao Tian's gaze turned to the small auditorium inside. "Sir, have you heard Principal Zhou Dongye's words clearly? Now, why don't we talk about the purpose of your actions?" For a very long time, there was no reply from the person inside. Then, in the next moment, a picture was publicly projected on the LCD screen outside the auditorium. It was a blueprint for a magic treasure, a pill furnace. The entire cauldron was greenish-gray in color, and its surface was decorated with jade and silver beads. The bottom of the cauldron was designed with spiral legs, and each spiral leg had 128 vents that were invisible to the naked eye, which could minimize the internal pressure produced during the refining process. Finally, a circular exhaust system was embedded at the bottom of the pill furnace, reflecting the outstanding concept of environmental protection. This was the winner of the Magic Treasure Design competition 3 years ago, and the author in the lower right corner was a person called Raven. In fact, Raven didn't represent a person, but the code name of a famous studio. The person who had founded Raven Studio back then was Fu Fuxing, who had graduated from Magic Treasure Development University and was in the same class as Xing Jingxian. The signature in the lower right corner of this spiral jade furnace design blueprint was the name that classmate Fu Fuxing had signed to promote the studio after winning the competition back then. Fu Fuxing, Gao Tian murmured. Fu Fuxing, who is this? Little Silver asked. The creator of Raven Studio, a famous Magic Treasure design studio in the industry. Classmate Fu Fuxing, who graduated back then, was in the same class as classmate Xing Jingxian, and they were both outstanding talents in the same class, said Gao Tian. So, when classmate Xing Jingxian was exposed for plagiarism back then, Fu Fuxing was the victim. That's right. Gao Tian nodded. It was classmate Fu who first raised doubts in public, and in the end, all the media joined in the crusade against the plagiarist, which ultimately led to the tragedy. When Gao Tian said this, Headmaster Zhou Dongye's face grew uglier. After some thought, he said, Captain Gao, you should be here to think of a way to save my student, not to look through old files. The school and society have long concluded that classmate Xing Jingxian plagiarized, and with both witnesses and material evidence, this is already an irreversible case. If we bring up old events again, we'll just be hurting classmate Zhang's family again. I'm afraid classmate Xing won't be able to rest in peace in heaven. Then, is the truth really as Headmaster Zhou Dongye says? What do you mean, Captain Gao? Headmaster Zhou's face darkened. Gao Tian snorted softly and said to the person inside, Mr. Zheng, I know what your goal is. But now that it's come to this, I hope you won't make any more mistakes. You must have done a lot of research over the years, right? You might as well take this opportunity to tell us all the suspicious points you've uncovered. Everyone here is a witness. As soon as Gao Tian said this, the person inside fell into a long silence. Mr. Zheng. Zhou Dongye's expression changed when he heard Gao Tian's name. He hadn't expected the person inside to actually be Xing Jingshuan's father. Captain Gao, you're a capable person to actually be able to guess my identity. The man inside sighed. How did you know the identity of the person inside? Little Silver asked in a low voice. Gao Tian also whispered in Little Silver's ear, I just casually tricked him, I didn't expect him to jump out. Little Silver, Xing Tianxiang, classmate Xing Jingshuan's father, was the culprit behind this hostage case and the serial murders. But what new evidence would Father Xing produce when the irrefutable facts from back then were already irrefutable? Many of the teachers had doubts in their hearts. After a few minutes, Papa Xing asked another question in the small auditorium. Next, I'd like to ask someone a question. Who? Gao Tian asked. Classmate Lin Shuyao should be here. Please ask her to step forward and answer my first question. Chapter 1038. Before this, Gao Tian had brought people to interrogate Lin Shuyao about the situation, but he didn't expect Lin Shuyao to have some kind of connection with this case. He gave his assistant a look, and the assistant hurriedly ran down to contact his colleagues in the intelligence department to search for information on Lin Shuyao. Lin Shuyao clenched her fists. She looked unusually nervous after Xing Tianxiang's question, and even her breathing grew heavier. Under the gazes of the surrounding teachers and nosy students, Lin Shuyao slowly walked forward with Gao Tian's help. Classmate Lin Shuyao, do you know why I called you out? Father Xing lowered his voice as much as he could to keep it as gentle as possible. In fact, whether it was Little Silver, Loopy Toad or Gao Tian, they could all feel the uncontrollable tremor in Father Zhang's throat. It was as if he had been waiting for this for a long time. Naturally, Father Zhang was extremely agitated, but he restrained himself and did his best to maintain the emotions in his heart so that they wouldn't explode. A person was at their weakest when they were venting their emotions, so Father Zhang could only endure it. He didn't want anyone else to find any opportunity before the truth of the matter came to light. Lin Shuyao was clearly hesitant about Father Zhang's question. She had been obsessed with her studies for the last few years in order to avoid the matter between her and Jing Jingxian. She had been living on tenterhooks, and had never expected the day the truth would come to light so soon. Classmate Lin, you can refuse to answer this criminal's question. Headmaster Zhou Dongye stepped forward again. Principal Zhou, if you interfere with this matter again, I will issue an arrest warrant for you and arrest you for the crime of disrupting order. Gao Tian glanced at Principal Zhou. Principal Zhou's face darkened, and he stepped back. Lin Shuyao could be considered a celebrity at Magic Treasure Development University. To think that such a beautiful president of the student union with excellent academic results was actually connected to the school disgrace from 3 years ago, this made all the teachers and students present curious. After a moment of silence, Lin Shuyao finally seemed to pluck up her courage and raised her head. Yes, Jing Jingxian, he's my ex-boyfriend. Gao Tian wasn't surprised by this answer, but it startled all the teachers and students present. Father Zhang, can you tell me when you broke up? Lin Shuyao said, after the Magic Treasure Design competition, Jingxian broke up with me. Very good, student Lin Shuyao's words are very honest. At least until now, you haven't lied to me. Father Zhang nodded. Then, student Lin usually has the habit of imitating beautiful handwriting. Lin Shuyao's eyes were already red. Yes, this is my hobby, Father Zhang. Next, Lin Shuyao, please answer my last question. Jingshuan's wool was written by you, Lin Shuyao. What? All the teachers and students present were stunned. Student Lin, why didn't you say so back then? Principal Zhou Dongye's voice also trembled. Lin Shuyao's heart was on the verge of collapse. She said while crying, after the plagiarism incident in the competition was exposed, Jingxian suffered retaliation. His arms were broken. Then, he came to me and asked me to write a letter of apology for him. I didn't expect that this letter of apology would become his will. Very good. Father Zhang was very satisfied with Lin Shuyao's answer. He had already investigated these facts a long time ago. Now that he had Lin Shuyao say it herself, it was only to prove it in front of everyone. Classmate Lin, I will remember your feelings for Jingxian. Thank you. Jing Tianchang, what the hell do you want? Principal Zhou roared. Principal Zhou Dongye, don't be anxious. The next question is for you. I also hope you can answer truthfully. If you answer a single question incorrectly, I can't guarantee the safety of the hostages here. The corners of Principal Zhou's mouth twitched. He was the principal of a cultivation institution of higher learning, and no one had ever dared to argue with him in this school. Gao Tian gazed at Principal Zhou's gloomy face. In his academic career, Principal Zhou had always believed in not competing. He was a very cautious person in his daily life. After the Magic Treasure Design plagiarism incident 3 years ago, Principal Zhou was the first person to stand up and apologize to the public on Jing Jingshuan's behalf. It was precisely because of this that Principal Zhou Dongye hadn't been affected by the incident back then, and had instead gained the image of an impartial and good principal. But since you've caused such a ruckus today, Gao Tian knew very well that the truth behind it wasn't as simple as it seemed back then. Father Zhang sneered on the broadcast and asked, Principal Zhou, let me ask you, after the incident, did you personally verify it? The cultivation police will investigate and verify it. I don't have the right to interfere. Very good, I understand what you mean, Principal Zhou. Father Zheng was silent for a moment before he continued. Does that mean you didn't even watch the video of the competition in its entirety, Principal Zhou? The police have already publicized all the evidence. What difference does it make whether I check it or not? It's just a waste of time. Since Principal Zhou didn't personally intervene in every matter, and just because of the condemnation of the public, you pushed an outstanding student into the public eye and forced him to apologize for something he didn't do. May I ask, Principal Zhou, is this what a principal should do? You, Principal Zhou, you don't have to be in a hurry to refute me. I have sufficient evidence to prove Jingshuan's innocence. At this point, Father Zheng controlled the LCD screen in the school square to show a chart of the relationship between the legal representatives of a company. This was the behind-the-scenes legal representative and the main staff of the famous magic weapon design studio, Raven Studio. Among them, Papa Zheng highlighted a person named Lu Yi. Principal Zhou, do you still recognize this name? Lu Yi, this is my disciple. What's wrong? Is there a problem with Lu Yi? Of course, Principal Zhou's disciple is amazing. Back then, Lu Yi was also a gold medalist at Magic Treasure Development University. As early as his sophomore year, Principal Zhou had taken a fancy to student Lu Yi's talent and took him in as a closed-door disciple. Later, Fu Fuxing appeared and gave Lu Yi the idea of forming a studio and working together to build a brand. Thus, student Lu recruited people from all over the school and took in all kinds of magic treasure design talents. Student Fu Fuxing and my son Jingxian both received invitations from student Lu Yi. Father Zheng unhurriedly told the story. Student Lu made a name for himself and established Raven Studio. Later, after recruiting student Fu, he pushed him to the position of CEO of the studio, while he himself retreated behind the scenes to take on the role of legal representative and company PR. Principal Zhou, don't you think it's strange? What on earth are you trying to say? Principal Zhou gritted his teeth. What I want to say is actually very simple. Xing Tianxiang said coldly, I want to say that student Lu Yi actually doesn't have any real ability. All the magic treasure designs he made in university, including the designs he submitted to the competition, were all based on my son Jingshuan's high school work, including that plagiarism case 3 years ago. Tianjin. Chapter 1039. Xing Tianxiang's words caused an uproar among the teachers and students. The truth was that there were far more shady dealings in the design industry than this. Perhaps this was just the tip of the iceberg, but because of the irrefutable evidence from 3 years ago, no one dared imagine what kind of impact this iron-faced principal of Magic Treasure Development University would have if this case had been successful. Therefore, most people were like Principal Zhou Dongye. Most of them didn't believe it. It had been 3 years since the incident, and Raven Studio was no longer the small studio it used to be. Raven Studio now enjoyed a global reputation and was about to go public. If this scandal was exposed at this time, it was likely that they would never be able to make a comeback. Father Zheng, since you say that, what evidence do you have? A university teacher stepped forward of his own accord. Xing Tianxiang's lips curled up. He had been waiting for this for so long. Things had already come to this point, and it went without saying how important the truth was. What Xing Tianxiang wanted to do at the very beginning was to draw attention to this incident with his actions. But there was one thing. Xing Tianxiang didn't kill anyone. When Xing Tianxiang arrived at the scene, he discovered that the dead students had already been murdered. The dead alchemist was the witness who had exposed the plagiarism case back then. Although Father Zheng hadn't obtained direct evidence yet, this coder was the person who had led public opinion online back then. Without knowing the truth, this student, who was an alumnus of the same year, had spread all kinds of rumors online as a bystander. In the end, he had blamed the online violence on Jingxian. As for the female live streamer, she was student Fu Fuxing's ex-girlfriend in university. These 3 people were crucial witnesses, but they were all dead by the time Father Zheng arrived. Of course, the most unlucky person was still student Shen Guangrong. When the suspect had been attacking student Shen Guangrong, Father Xing had used his strength to lend a helping hand from the screen and stop the murderer. Father Xing speculated that student Shen Guangrong was very likely a random target the murderer had chosen to mislead the public. That way, the police might not be able to link this case to the Magic Treasure design plagiarism case from 3 years ago. Father Xing actually already had an idea who the culprit was. Father Xing vaguely sensed that there was an insurmountable abyss waiting for him ahead. He didn't know what he would face if he continued to investigate further. But Father Xing was well aware that he was a father. Since he was a father, he had to do what he was supposed to do, redress his son's grievances. When Father Xing walked out of the broadcasting room, the students in the auditorium, as well as the teacher who had given the lecture earlier, had already calmed down from the initial panic. So far, everything Father Xing had done really made it impossible to associate him with this vicious serial killer. Most of them were just observing. During their public lecture in the auditorium, a shadow suddenly jumped out of the big screen and finally materialized into Father Xing in front of them. Father Xing was very strong. The moment he appeared, everyone in the auditorium was bound by the power of this shadow and couldn't move. Then, Father Xing got the female teacher to cooperate with him and take away all the students' phones. He also activated the barrier inside the auditorium to block any possibility of telepathic magic informants. Then, the scene before them happened. Father Xing slowly walked out of the broadcasting room. He walked up to the dais, stood at attention, and bowed deeply to everyone. "Teacher and fellow students, I'm sorry to have startled you. Please stay with me for a while longer to do what a father should do." Father Xing bowed again. The students and teachers in the auditorium were unusually cooperative. They were new students this year, and although they had heard about the plagiarism case back then, they hadn't personally experienced it. At that time, they had been so busy with the college entrance examination that they hadn't had time to care about the comments online. This was also the reason why Father Xing had chosen to kidnap this batch of students. They were a relatively neutral party, and their opinions on this matter were more from the perspective of the onlookers. On the other hand, Father Xing also needed direct witnesses. The witnesses he had been looking for had all been eliminated. Since there was no longer any testimony from back then, Father Xing had to find a new batch of witnesses. "Now that things have come to this, are you still hiding? I still have a lot of evidence on hand. If I play it all, you'll probably spend the rest of your life in prison, won't you?" Father Xing stood with his hands behind his back. He was dressed in pitch-black ancient clothes, and when he released his aura, it fluttered even though there was no wind, naturally giving off the air of a master. After the plagiarism case, Father Xing had been looking for evidence all this time. It had been an extremely difficult process, and the person behind the scenes was wearing down all the evidence bit by bit. The results of Father Xing's years of painstaking work had already been released just now. If the witnesses were gone, he would create new ones. If the evidence was gone, he would create new ones. As Father Xing said this, he could already sense that the person he was looking for had already arrived in the auditorium without anyone knowing. This kind of silent infiltration method was also the main method of the serial murders in the apartment. "Student Louis, you should be coming out now, right?" "Louis. Senior Louis is here." Everyone in the auditorium was astonished. This speech was also clearly heard by all the teachers and students in the school, including the police, through the public broadcast button in the broadcasting room. "It's impossible for Louis to kill anyone. He doesn't have that kind of ability. Jing Tianxiang, don't make irresponsible accusations." Principal Zhou Dongye stood up with an extremely agitated expression. "Principal Zhou, what proof do you have?" Gao Tian looked askance at him. Louis. It's impossible for him to commit a crime. That's because his golden core was completely removed the year he entered university because of a myoma. That is to say, it's impossible for him to cast any spells. Even his strength is much weaker than that of a normal cultivator. The 3 dead students were all at the golden core stage, and Louis couldn't beat them at all. So he can't be the murderer. Principal Zhou Dongye said agitatedly. Is he not the murderer just because he can't use spirit energy? Father Zheng laughed. Principal Zhou Dongye, it's really sad that you're still lying to yourself even now. Even if you can't use spirit energy, as long as you have a powerful enough rechargeable magic treasure, you can still commit murder. In my son Jingshuan's high school work, there was a design for a magic treasure that could move between screens and kill people without leaving a trace. Student Louis stole this design and developed it. I want to ask Student Louis, after stealing so many of my son's designs, have you paid the copyright fee? Chapter 1040. Father Zheng's question was loud and clear. No one thought that the magic treasure plagiarism case that had rocked the whole country 3 years ago would actually see the light of day again under such circumstances. Father Zheng had hijacked a university student in a small auditorium, and this case had attracted even more attention through a live online broadcast. The cultivation police wanted to block the news, but it was already too late. Relying on his own power, Daoist Guang had spread the news all over the world, and it had become a matter that the whole world was paying attention to. As the big brother of the live streaming platform, Daoist Guang now had a huge number of light chasers behind him. Of course, apart from Wang Ling's secret greeting, the reason why Daoist Guang had chosen to live stream this incident was that he wanted to use this incident to let more people know the truth of the case and reflect on it. Student Jing Jingxian couldn't stand the strange gazes, and died in humiliation amidst everyone's curses. He had chosen to commit suicide to defend his last bit of dignity. If you haven't experienced it yourself, please don't judge anyone or anything lightly, Daoist Guang said to his audience in the live stream room. What had really killed student Jing Jingxian wasn't the plagiarism case itself, but the human nature reflected in it. It could be said that the netizens who had gone with the flow without any thought or investigation had pushed student Jing Jingxian into the true abyss. After Father Jing revealed the possibility that Louis had committed the crime, the auditorium fell silent. Louis still hadn't shown himself, but Father Jing knew very well that he was here. He was lurking in the dark as he pondered his next move. All these years, Louis had retreated behind the scenes and used stolen works to package himself as a genius in the eyes of the world. If he impulsively stepped forward at a time like this, with such a high reputation and achievements, everything would be over. Father Zhang was waiting for Louis to come forward and admit his mistake. But it was very clear that this person, who had been blinded by his reputation, wouldn't show himself so easily. I know, Student Louis, you're already here. Even if you don't want to admit it, what I said is the truth. Father Zheng stood with his hands behind his back, his expression indifferent without the slightest hint of nervousness or panic. Father Zheng smiled bitterly. To be honest, Louis, I don't blame you. Because I won't blame a person without talent. In the past, when Jingxian was still alive, I was always against him engaging in the field of magic treasure design. The waters of this field are too deep, and I was worried that he would fall into it sooner or later. But your appearance, Louis, at least proves that Jingxian is a genius, right? Father Zhang looked up at the ceiling and sighed. After the plagiarism case, Jingxian talked to me. He talked about how the people around him had changed after the murder. Before the murder, he had been the center of attention at school. But after the case, he was looked down upon and criticized wherever he went. Even his best friends began to keep their distance. I don't know how the students who watched Jingxian fall into the abyss step by step and didn't lend a helping hand will feel now that you're paying attention to this case again. It was your violence and the irresponsible public opinion on the internet that completely sent Jingxian into the abyss. Everyone fell silent. Principal Zhou Dongye's expression was even uglier. Cold violence was also a form of school violence, and as principal, he couldn't shirk his responsibility. At the same time, Principal Zhou felt a little afraid. He was afraid that the truth back then would really be reversed. What's more, he never thought that his incorruptibility back then would actually harm his own student with his own hands. Principal Zhou knelt on the ground in vexation. Father Zheng's words had already broken down his psychological defenses bit by bit. But this wasn't the result Father Zheng wanted to see. Classmate Lu Yi, I'm waiting for you right here. If you still have a little conscience, please step forward. Father Zheng stood on the podium in the small auditorium like a priest praying. He had never hoped so much for that person to step forward on his own. He was well aware that his son Jing Jingxian was already dead, and there was no point in dwelling on death and resurrection. He just wanted an apology. At the very least, his son's soul could rest in eternal peace. After waiting for another 5 minutes, Father Zheng's expression gradually turned grave. For now, it was really too much to ask for an atrocious sinner to apologize. Whether it was a homicidal maniac who attacked an innocent female university student abroad or a shameless pervert who attacked young children, their hearts were twisted for all sorts of reasons. They rationalized their repulsive actions as self-consolation, shamelessly believing that this was what the world owed them. It was precisely because of this that they had never truly regretted their actions. In the depths of their hearts, they believed that this was nothing more than a form of compensation from the heavens. Father Zheng had always felt that when this sort of scum of society was exposed in the news, their faces shouldn't be censored. Instead, their ugly deeds should be exposed to the light of day, so that the world could clearly see their twisted faces. Father Zheng's original intention was to expose the truth of the matter. He didn't want to hurt anyone, not even Lu Yi. What he needed was for Lu Yi to repent and turn himself in. But now, it seemed that it would be very difficult to expose the truth of the matter if he didn't use some special methods to bring Lu Yi to justice. Elsewhere, Gao Tian had already ordered the intelligence team to obtain all the latest information on Father Zheng. A lot of the information actually hadn't been updated and was old. That was because Father Zheng had disappeared after Jing Jingshuan's death, and had lost contact with his family for a time. He had been listed as a missing person as early as 2 years ago. But for Gao Tian, this was still helpful. At the very least, he could gain a more comprehensive understanding of Father Zheng. What's new? Little Silver asked on the side. There's nothing special about it. Gao Tian checked Jing Tianxiang's information. Father Zheng was a local resident of Songhai City who had grown up in the city and even studied at university there. There didn't seem to be any problems with this information, but when he read the column for realm registration, Gao Tian frowned deeply. Golden Core Stage. Gao Tian sensed something suspicious. Judging from his aura, Father Zheng's realm was at least at the nascent soul stage. In 3 years, if he wasn't a descendant of profound Saint Tyrannical Song, could his realm advance so quickly? Chapter 1041. Modern cultivation society didn't lack fortuitous encounters, and many cultivators could often use all kinds of fortuitous encounters to raise their realms in a short period of time, but this kind of increase wouldn't be too abnormal. Furthermore, it would often be a small increase. In the Cultivation Encyclopedia, this kind of small increase in realms over a short period of time had a special term, minor sublimation. But Father Zheng's situation was clearly different. To achieve this kind of major leap in realms, it usually had to be related to banned drugs or forbidden spells. How can someone advance so quickly if they don't increase their realms? It's not like they're writing. Gao Tian stared at the report and started to re-examine the matter in his heart. So far, Father Zheng hadn't harmed any of the hostages, but whether or not he had, hostage-taking had already become a crime. It was like some criminals who held a knife to a person's neck, but actually didn't dare hurt them at all. Murder was a serious crime, and these criminals didn't dare take the risk lightly. Unless they had no other choice, a hostage-taker usually wouldn't choose to hurt a hostage, as that would be too extreme. As for the police, in order to protect the hostages, they had to consider the criminals' needs as much as possible when rescuing them in order to lower their psychological defenses. But there was one exception to these conditions, and that was a special regulation the cultivation police had for kidnapping cases. Is there a problem with an abnormal increase in realms? Little Silver asked suspiciously. Actually, he didn't really understand the situation. After all, he had seen for himself how heaven-defying his master Wang Ling was. At the beginning, Master Wang Ling's realm would increase by 1 level every 2 years, but this rate of increase was now accelerating, and the intervals between realms were getting shorter and shorter. It was precisely because of this that Little Silver was well aware that his master was looking for a way to perfectly control his strength. Of course, Wang Ling's situation was actually a little different from Father Zhang's. Wang Ling was born with it, while Gao Tian had already determined that Father Zhang might have cultivated some kind of forbidden spell or taken some banned drug. It's over. Gao Tian broke out in a cold sweat as he stared at the report. If this goes on, there's a very high chance that Father Zhang will be directly shot dead by the special regulation. Is it illegal to increase one's realm too quickly? Loopy Toad asked. It's not illegal to grow fast, but if you grow fast and take hostages, it's dangerous to make such risky moves. Gao Tian's expression gradually turned solemn as he explained to Little Silver and Loopy Toad, if there's an abnormal growth rate, there's a 95% chance that it's because of forbidden drugs or forbidden spells. The reason why forbidden drugs and forbidden techniques are included in the list of forbidden drugs is because cultivators will cause great harm to their bodies and even their minds after cultivating. Deliberately cultivating forbidden techniques and causing harm to others is 100% criminal responsibility. In our world, even the mentally ill will be punished for their crimes. Also, if a mentally ill person breaks the law, his or her family will also be implicated. If his or her family fails to properly supervise him or her, they will also be prosecuted. Gao Tian explained the current situation. All in all, the current situation was not optimistic. Whether it was taking forbidden drugs or cultivating forbidden techniques, no one could guarantee that a cultivator's mental state could be stabilized after trying these two actions. What Gao Tian was most worried about now was that the higher-ups would notice the abnormal growth in realms in the data, and directly direct combat operations to forcefully attack and kill Father Zhang. When that happened, the situation would definitely become chaotic, and the truth of the case from 3 years ago might be drowned out in the chaos once more, until it was finally left unsettled. Whether it was the hostages being injured or Father Zhang being prevented from revealing the truth, Gao Tian didn't want to see either. Elsewhere, in the cultivation police headquarters office, Chief Xiao slapped the table. Tell me. What on earth is going on now? Why hasn't the Immortal Arts mobile squad made a move yet? What the hell are they doing? The murderer who's taking hostages is advancing at an abnormal rate, which clearly shows that there's a problem. If the hostages are harmed because of a forbidden spell or forbidden drug, who can bear the responsibility? On the side, the police assistant wiped his sweat and comforted him. Chief, don't be angry. Most netizens are now focusing their attention on the case from 3 years ago again, because the suspect Jing Tianqiang hasn't harmed the hostages yet. If we make a move now, it might cause public outrage. I'm sorry for my bad attitude, I apologize first. But the higher-ups are also putting a lot of pressure on us for this case. I hope we can solve it as soon as possible. Chief Xiao rubbed his brow and took a deep breath. Who's in charge of this case? It's Superintendent Gao Tian, who was recently promoted. Chief Xiao, you even signed off on it before. Oh, it's him. I remember. Chief Xiao nodded. Comrade Gao Tian has always performed well. If he's in command at the scene, I might be a little more at ease. There shouldn't be any problems. Furthermore, Team Leader Little Silver from the Office of Strategic Deception is also at the scene. Team Leader Little Silver's realm is profound, and his assistance is double insurance. The Office of Strategic Deception's team leader is also there. That's pretty stable. Hearing this, Chief Shao instantly heaved a sigh of relief. He unhurriedly picked up the cup in front of him, blew on it a few times, and then took a big sip of tea. Oh, by the way, Chief Shao, I just received news that Director Audiobook is on his way. Pooh. Chief Shao spat out a mouthful of tea at the assistant in front of him. What's he doing here? I heard he's passing through the area. Director Zhua is also the team leader of the Office of Strategic Deception Supervisory Team. With 2 team leaders here, it should be triple insurance. Chief Shao. Triple insurance my *SS. Chief Shao, you don't look too good. Do you have a problem with Director Zhua? After saying this, the assistant realized that he had said something inappropriate, and hurriedly covered his mouth. Chief Shao glanced at the little assistant in front of him. Let me ask you, who arrested the old devil a few months ago? Director Zhua, what about the Immortal Mansion case? Director Zhua, what about the Evil Sword God case? Or Director Zhua, Zhen, I've been in this position for quite a few years. I'm just short of a big commendation, and I might be able to move up again. This Zhua isn't from our police station, but in the end, he gets all the credit every time. Chief Shao touched his heart, feeling very aggrieved. Then Chief Shao means, inform the Immortal Arts Mobile Squad to send 1/10 of our men to keep an eye on Audiobook. Remember, after he's finished watching the scene, urge him to leave as soon as possible. Alright, Chief Shao. Chapter 1042. Number 60 High was already in the process of being promoted to a key city high school. Although the fragments of the Jade Scroll of school history were still being collected, like all the other key city high school candidates, the general administration of 100 schools had to go through the necessary procedures, and Audiobook had to personally approve and sign it. Today, Audiobook had originally planned to visit the summer campus construction team in charge of number 60 High and several other candidate high schools. In the end, he had only been halfway there when Secretary Dakong directly called his cell phone. Little Zhuzi, there's a problem at Magic Treasure Development University. It seems that the Immortal Arts Mobile Squad has been mobilized. There's a police officer called Gao Tian handling the situation at the scene. Go over and take a look, said Secretary Dakong. Old leader. I'm busy meeting with the school construction team. Since a police officer has already gone, it doesn't matter if I go or not. Audiobook wiped at his sweat. He was mainly afraid that if he went over, he would inexplicably gain another merit after the case was closed. Chief Shao at the police station had already been unhappy because of the old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion, so Audiobook felt that it was indeed a little inappropriate for him to interfere with the normal work of the police station. But Secretary Dakong didn't think so. Little Zhuzi, you're wrong. The general administration of 100 schools is in charge of all schools, including universities. The police station is in charge of hostage-taking, but the general administration of 100 schools is in charge of improving academic discipline. Most of the public opinion online now has a lot to say about the plagiarism case from 3 years ago. You're in charge of improving academic discipline, while the police station is in charge of rescuing the hostages. There's essentially no conflict. Audiobook, we need to strictly rectify and deal with the problems of school violence and academic fraud. I've already decided on the case from 3 years ago. I've now specially approved the documents for you to be the chief commander of the investigation. Audiobook, already approved. I haven't received the documents yet. They should be on the way. Holding the phone in one hand, Secretary Dakong glanced at the time on the computer screen before he said to Audiobook, Little Zhuzi, you should be in the car, right? Yes, Zhonglang is driving. Audiobook nodded. Open the window, said Secretary Dakong. All right. Audiobook obeyed. Just as he did so, a document flew directly in through the window like a hidden weapon. A courier on a flying sword greeted Aude Joie in a very handsome manner. Director Joie, your express delivery has arrived. Remember to give me a 5-star rating. Secretary Dakong, Immortal Tong Express, mission accomplished. Very reliable. If we let them deliver the packages, we definitely won't have to worry about sending the packages to other places by mistake like the Federation Express did. Aude Joie, alright, that's all I've said. We have to take care of both the school's atmosphere and the students' minds. I know that little Joisy has been very busy recently. You've been busy with the construction of the key high school in the city, and you've also been busy going to a few Golden Core universities to understand the situation. Things like finding 3 study partners to accompany foreign students must be dealt with seriously. Yes. Aude Joie nodded solemnly. Our country has been on the road from poverty to prosperity, and we have long been used to seeing the world as equals. Many special treatments have disappeared, and more equal treatment has been born. Isn't it a pleasure to have friends coming from afar? Being neither servile nor overbearing is the best form of respect. Excerpt from People's Daily, Secretary Dakong sighed emotionally. It's not easy to correct the unhealthy atmosphere in schools, but as long as there are outstanding cadres like you, I believe that we can definitely guide these schools to establish a new style. When you're done with your work, I'll personally give you permission to take a vacation. Yes, leader. I guarantee I'll complete the task. Aude Joie nodded. The old secretary's heartfelt words were well-reasoned and convincing, and Aude Joie was already unable to decline the task in front of him. In fact, he had already been paying attention to the Magic Treasure Development University incident in the car, and had been planning to check it out after work was done. Little Lang, change your route to Magic Treasure Development University. The old secretary personally arranged this task, Aude Joie said from the back of the car. Then what about the school construction team? We've already arranged a time. I'm going to deal with Magic Treasure Development University. I'll leave the school construction team to you. You've been working for me for so long, I believe in your abilities. Also, pay attention to the materials, and don't cut corners. If anything goes wrong, I'll hold you responsible. I have high hopes for you. Yes. I guarantee I'll complete the task. Zhong Lang nodded solemnly in the same tone as when Aude Joie had spoken to the old secretary earlier. And then, there was no then, when Zhong Lang sent Aude Joie to the scene, all the police officers present couldn't help wiping at their cold sweat when they saw him arrive. You go. I don't dare, offend Director Joie, is this guy full? Then offending Chief Xiao is enough. Of course not, then you go. F***K, why should I go? Aude Joie was about to find someone to understand the current situation when a deputy captain was pushed forward by the police officers. Director Joie, this is a hostage situation. If you always come to inspect our work, we welcome you. But please don't interfere too much. What do you mean by interfere too much? Aude Joie smiled. Let me ask you, where did this hostage situation take place? University. Then what kind of place does our general administration of 100 schools care about? The deputy captain, all right, I won't steal your job. Aude Joie patted the deputy captain on the shoulder. Deputy Captain Liu, don't be nervous. Rescuing the hostages is your job, while my job is to investigate the case from 3 years ago, so there's essentially no conflict between our jobs. After saying that, Aude Joie slapped the document signed by the old secretary on Deputy Captain Liu's chest. This is a document signed by Secretary Dakong of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools himself, requesting that I thoroughly investigate the plagiarism case from 3 years ago. If there are no objections, I don't think Chief Xiao's side will either. Deputy Captain Liu took the document with trembling hands, and all the courage he had felt when he had spoken just now was swept away in an instant. Aude Joie, so, what's the situation? Deputy Captain Liu, there hasn't been any movement for some time, the hostages aren't in danger for the time being. But the Immortal Arts mobile squad is ready to fight. Considering that the suspect's realm growth rate is abnormal, it's possible that he has taken forbidden drugs or cultivated forbidden spells, which can lead to mental instability. Then has he provided any new evidence for the case from 3 years ago? Not for the time being. Then what about Lu Yi, who was mentioned earlier? If Xing Tianqiang is making irresponsible accusations, shouldn't he refute it? We've already sent someone to look for him, Deputy Captain Lu replied. At that moment, a police officer ran over anxiously. Deputy Captain Lu, something happened. What happened now? We found Lu Yi. He's in his own house. Bring him here. He's already dead. He died in exactly the same way as those people in the apartment. Want to make it so that the dead can't testify. Audiobook felt that this case had become interesting. The current situation was already very clear. Apart from Father Zhang, there was a second force working hard on the case from back then. Chapter 1043. Lu Yi had been killed at home in exactly the same manner as those Magic Treasure Development University graduates at Divine Leisure Apartments. They had all died without any obvious signs of an invasion. This person had been very skillful and killed in one blow. Whether it was in terms of strength, motive or method of invasion, combining the above 3 points, Father Zhang was undoubtedly the prime suspect. For the time being, this matter was still in the hands of the police and hadn't been made public, because it was really too strange. Almost all the key figures in the plagiarism case from 3 years ago were dead. If Father Zhang had really come purely for revenge, there was no need at all for him to specially plan and organize this hostage-taking drama to publicize what had happened 3 years ago. He just needed to kill all the targets of his revenge behind the scenes. So, the current situation was very clear. This was framing. After hearing the news that Lu Yi had been killed, Gao Tian, Little Silver and Audiobook had a tacit understanding that this was the case. But they had no idea at all what this second force behind the scenes was. In the small auditorium, Father Zhang broke out in a cold sweat. He had been waiting for Lu Yi to step forward on his own. After waiting for a long time for Lu Yi to show no signs of remorse, he had been about to circulate his qi and use a spell to directly capture Lu Yi on the other end of the screen and interrogate him on the spot. In the end, when Father Zhang's spiritual senses penetrated Lu Yi's home, he saw that Lu Yi was already dead in front of his computer. His throat had been directly slit open, and blood sprayed out onto the ceiling. Drops of blood formed beads on the scarlet ceiling and dripped down incessantly. The scene was as horrifying as a horror movie. In a trance, Father Zhang withdrew his spiritual senses. Lu Yi was dead. The most important person in overturning the case had disappeared just like that. Father Zhang felt like it was a huge blow. Who on earth was it? Who could actually overturn the case several times in a row and make a move before he could? The power behind this made Father Zhang feel a little afraid. It was like a curse, as if an invisible curse power was thwarting his every move. If he couldn't overturn the case this time, after he went to jail, there might be no one who could help his son clear his name of this injustice that had been buried for 3 years. If he wanted to clarify, he had to choose this moment when the attention was the greatest. It was common knowledge that netizens, as a bystander, would usually only pay attention to an event for 7 days. No matter how big an event was, after a week of fermenting on the internet, its popularity would be suppressed by a new event. In the end, no one would pay attention to it. The truth was that Father Zhang wasn't necessarily as pessimistic as he imagined. One of the most important reasons was that Audiobook was here. And this was the additional effect of Audiobook's arrival. There was a 100% chance that the case would be successfully solved, and there was a 100% chance that the case would be completed. Father Zhang made the whole country aware of this matter, and even more people started to pay attention to the truth behind the plagiarism case from 3 years ago. Naturally, there was no lack of students among this sea of onlookers, whether it was number 60 High's class group chat or the private, Happy Study group chat. Their screens had already been flooded by the incident at Magic Treasure Development University. In the group chat, Super Chin had been depressed for the last 2 days because he had run into Old Pan when he went out to copy homework, but the incident at Magic Treasure Development University eased his gloominess a little. Scientific research showed that when people ate melons, or in layman's terms, gossiping, their brains would secrete a hormone called dopamine, which made them feel happy and happy. The effect was similar to eating candy. That was to say, gossiping and eating candy could both make people happy. As the saying went, if it didn't concern you, don't worry about it. Why were onlookers called onlookers? Because melons were sweet. And the sweet one could make people happy. I think this Senior Zhang's injustice is definitely true. Super Chen's words in the group chat were astonishing. It was fine for the others to see this, but Wang Ling couldn't help trembling in his heart. This time, he had to believe it even if he didn't want to. Super Chen's blessed mouth wasn't something he was born with, but something he had developed. After exploring Super Chen's memories the last time, Wang Ling had a whole new understanding of this monstrous mouth. The key is the witness, which is gone now. Dopigwa sighed. Isn't there still Lu Yi? This Father Jing hijacked the entire auditorium to threaten Lu Yi to come out. As long as Lu Yi is willing to come out, everything will be fine. Unless Lu Yi is dead, Super Chin continued. Wang Ling, Dopigwa, he's really dead. Super Chin, what the hell? I was just saying, don't joke around. Dopigwa, he's really dead. An uncle of mine at the police station told me that Louis died very miserably, and his death was exactly the same as that of the graduates from Divine Leisure Apartments. Now, the police's biggest suspect is Father Zhang. Because almost all the evidence and the motive point to him. Wang Ling was stupefied. Super Chen's mouth and Dopigwa's uncle, these two could totally open a detective agency together. If they had been born a few decades earlier, Detective Conan probably wouldn't have been involved. This is going to be difficult. Just now, I saw a lot of netizens analyze this Lu Yi as the key figure. If Father Zhang wants to overturn the case, he'll have to rely on Lu Yi. Whether Lu Yi is willing to tell the truth or not, at the very least, he has to be alive. Little Peanut sent a message in the group. As for that classmate Fu Fuxing, he was completely in the dark, and was manipulated by Lu Yi from the start. In the end, the mastermind is dead, and the current situation is that there's no evidence. Not necessarily. Super Chen suddenly said, I'm thinking of a possibility. What possibility? 3 years ago, there might have been other witnesses. Including when Louis died, there might have been other witnesses, Super Chen said. Wang Ling sent several question marks. First of all, I want to say that when I say witness, I'm not talking about people. For an apartment as old as Divine Leisure Apartments, there are bound to be cockroaches and ants, right? Maybe they were eyewitnesses to the crime and Lu Yi's death 3 years ago. Super Chen said, I know of a spell that can communicate with living beings. Dopigwa should be more familiar with this than I am. Dopigwa nodded and said, indeed, a high-level pet trainer can do it. Maybe we can ask teacher Wei Ji to help, there might really be hope. But the problem is, how do we find cockroaches and ants? You'll have to ask number 59 high school's professional pest elimination team about this. Number 59 high school's pest elimination team, don't tell me you're talking about, that's right, it's that group of cats that appeared at number 59 high school before. With that black cat as their leader, I heard that after the Spirit Sword Exchange Conference, this black cat led the way in wiping out Shadow Stream's headquarters. Since then, it has made a name for itself, and then took advantage of that momentum to start a pest elimination business, Super Chin said. Wang Ling, Dopigwa and Little Peanut, Super Chin, I heard that with that black cat as their leader, their business now covers all the major districts of Shanghai City. It's much easier for them to find cockroaches and ants than it is for us. Most importantly, they know how to hold back when catching things. Their employers hate cockroaches and mosquitoes to the bone, and many of them ask them to keep them alive. When they catch them, they'll be especially careful, and in the end, they'll give them to their employers to ravage. Wang Ling. Chapter 1044. As Super Chen had said, after the Spirit Sword exchange meet between number 60 High School and number 59 High School, that black cat called Jingtan had become the cat tyrant in that area, and the independent regiment led by Jingtan had grown from a small one to the strength of more than 10 divisions. Jingtan had never imagined that it would have such a rich military force. With more cats under its command, its business naturally began to grow at a rapid pace. Jingtan's 4 pests eradication team was already very big. At least in Shanghai City, there was no longer any human company that could compete with the cat regiment led by Black Charcoal. Cats were born with innate talent for catching these nimble little things. Now, Jingtan's 4 pests eradication team had been deployed abroad, and it had even given itself an English name, Li Jingtan. It couldn't be helped. If it wanted to connect with foreign countries, it had to be more westernized. Of course, this was very normal business dealings, and was fundamentally different from those schools that belittled themselves by finding study companions for international students. The overseas business wasn't as big as the domestic business, so Li Jingtan donated all the money it earned abroad to build Hope primary schools in the country. Nowadays, even a stray cat knew the importance of equality, and the respect between living creatures should be mutual. Even a stray cat would find it a little shameful to belittle itself and flatter an outsider's stinky feet. Mr. Li Jingtan, your team is truly conscientious and conscientious. We admire you. In that tree hole outside number 59 High School, Li Jingtan was discussing a foreign business deal when a white cat with curly hair took the initiative to shake its paw. This was a native breed of Mishio Nation, the curly spirit fairy. It was a native civet, born with strong spiritual intelligence and strong combat ability. But because it was so good-looking, many cultivators would rather keep it at home and provide it with food and water than let it participate in battle, for fear that it would hurt them. Thus, the curly spirit fairy had gradually lost its wild nature in Mishio Nation, and would meow madly in fear of mice and cockroaches. Li Jingtan had seen this business opportunity, which was why it had expanded its business abroad. This curly spirit fairy cat in front of them was called Mary, and could be considered the representative of Mishio Nation's cats who had crossed the ocean to negotiate. Mary's owner doted on her so much that he had directly chartered 2 immortal boats to send her over. Li Jingtan and the cats around it were taken aback by its generosity. Although the deal had been negotiated, Li Jingtan wasn't in a good mood. This was a big deal. The long-term employment agreement it signed with Mary would lead to a large number of cats following Mary back to solve the problems of rats and pests for Mary and her companions. The sadness of parting is unavoidable. Another thing that made Li Jingtan unhappy was the news currently being broadcast on TV about Father Zhang's hostage situation, as well as the magic treasure design plagiarism incident from 3 years ago. The deal is done. You should be happy, boss. The monk comforted Li Jingtan on the side. It and the others didn't know what was wrong with their boss. Ever since they had seen the news, they had felt that their boss had fallen into a trance. Li Jingtan didn't say a word. After wagging its tail at Mary to show its politeness, it took the initiative to climb the trunk of the old locust tree. Standing firmly on a branch, it stared in one direction. The setting sun shone down at an angle, and through the gaps between the trees, the scattered rays fell on the black cat's body, as if it had been draped in a floral dress. Flowers gradually dazzle the eyes. Looking at this scene, the monk couldn't help reciting a poem. After a long while, it came back to its senses and turned to look at their big client, Mary. "Miss Mary, I'm really sorry. Our boss has an unpredictable temperament, and sometimes just likes to suddenly become sentimental. Oh, it's fine, I don't mind at all. Only this kind of cat is charming. The curly hogue on Miss Mary's head changed its position, and she gave an intoxicated smile. A large part of the reason why they wanted to do such a big deal with Li Jingtan's team was that Mary had taken a fancy to Li Jingtan. This was a cold and aloof cat that had detached itself from the vulgar world. Furthermore, it was still able to maintain its modesty after seeing Mary, which was really too rare. Mary felt that she was already deeply attracted to Li Jingtan's temperament. For Mary, the sentimental Li Jingtan was the most handsome cat in her mind. Ah! How great would it be if she could have a monkey with Li Jingtan in her lifetime? Miss Mary! Miss Mary! The monk called out softly. Seeing that Miss Mary was still obsessed with its boss's looks, it left dejectedly. Beauty was in the eyes of a sentimental cat, it didn't care so much. In contrast, it was Li Jingtan's abnormal state that worried the monk a little. Although its boss had indeed become more sentimental after the establishment of the cat group, as its trusted subordinate for many years, the monk could still sense whether or not the reflection in its eyes was melancholy. In short, its boss was a little strange today. Was it because of that Magic Treasure Development University news? The monk carefully recalled that 3 years ago, the independent regiment had still been very small, and had basically had no business dealings with Magic Treasure Development University. But if it had to be said, the independent regiment had taken over the Divine Leisure Apartments case, which had been involved in multiple serial murders. Furthermore, the monk clearly remembered that under the leadership of its boss, Li Jingtan, they had cleaned up the most terrifying cockroach gang leader in Divine Leisure Apartments, the king of cockroaches in all of Songhai City, Cockroach Wenxiang. After this guy had been caught, the monk had stepped on it several times. Who would have thought that this cockroach would be so tenacious? Not only hadn't it been broken, it had even cried out in pleasure. Now, this cockroach gang leader was sealed in a strengthened goldfish tank, and there was practically nowhere for it to run. Why was it kept in a goldfish tank, you ask? The reason was very simple. As the king of cockroaches, Cockroach Wenxiang was as big as 2 palms of an adult. It could even fly, and when the steel wings on its back spread out, it had a powerful cutting and destructive power. Why was Cockroach Wenxiang so powerful? The reason was very simple, it was a pure-blooded southern cockroach. Furthermore, as the king of cockroaches, it also had an extremely powerful reproductive ability, and could give birth to thousands of cockroaches in one nest. These thousands of little cockroaches would continue to give birth, and if they continued to develop, they would be able to circle the earth. But fortunately, Cockroach Wenxiang had already been captured by the independent regiment, and the biggest cockroach gang in Songhai City had been eliminated. At the very least, the cockroaches of various families would stop for a while. Seeing that its boss, Li Jingtan, was in a bad mood, the monk was wondering if it should take out the fish tank in which Cockroach Wenxiang was sealed to relieve its boredom. At that moment, the monk smelled a very familiar scent. Suddenly, the monk raised its head. Immortal meow. Chapter 1045. It could be said that the war between the cockroaches and the cat groups had started before the independent regiment had even been established. This was a global underground dispute, just like the feud between cultivators and the demon race and the devil race, which had lasted for 1,000 years. Everyone in the spirit beast circle knew that cockroaches and cat groups couldn't coexist. For many years, cockroaches had been loathed for all kinds of bad practices. For example, they liked to live in greasy and smelly sewers and didn't care about their own hygiene at all. They used their greasy and germ-covered bodies to contaminate food and spread deadly germs to every corner of the city. How terrifying were the cockroaches in the cultivation world! They had more tenacious vitality than normal cockroaches, and because of their strong reproductive ability, cultivators were defeated when they ran into cockroaches. Many cultivators would even choose to directly move out after discovering a cockroach nest at home. Once a cockroach nest was discovered, it wouldn't take more than a few days for the cockroaches to crawl into every corner of the house. As soon as you opened the door, you would see these pitch-black things spreading their steel wings and flying all over the place. Thus, exterminating cockroaches and maintaining the environment in the cultivation world became something that all cultivators had to work together to face. Cockroaches reproduced so quickly that they couldn't be eradicated, so at the very least, they had to suppress their numbers by eliminating them every year. There was now a cultivators' pest exterminator guild in the market responsible for dealing with insect pests in each household. The guild would issue missions in the announcement hall based on the situation of the insect pests in each area. Cultivators who accepted the mission would receive a watch-shaped soul collector to record the number of cockroaches eliminated, and the mission would be considered complete once the target was reached. Once the mission was completed, the cultivator would receive a certificate issued by Huashio Alliance as well as a reward of Immortal Fate merit points, which could be directly exchanged for all the cultivation resources they wanted in the guild. This sounded easy, but it wasn't. After several years of working with the Pest Exterminator Guild, Huashio Alliance realized that it was difficult to completely suppress the insect pests with the strength of cultivators alone, and that there would be additional losses. The main reason was that such a large area of pests would make many cultivators who went on missions choose to directly use their ultimate skills to kill the pests, and some even used sacred artifacts to kill the cockroaches. In the end, a lot of cockroaches were killed, but with the extinction of the cockroaches, the buildings would also be greatly damaged at the same time. Therefore, this kind of behavior was not worth it. After some consideration, Huashio Alliance decided to use some local spirit beasts to help clear out the pests, and the effect of this initiative was surprisingly good. A large part of the reason why the independent regiment was able to develop now was because of Huashio Alliance's support. Not only did Li Jingtan lead the cats to protect the environment, it had also found a way for its cat regiment to survive and develop. Of course, apart from Huashio Alliance's support, another very important reason for its current scale was that Li Jingtan had personally captured Chonggang's boss, Cockroach Wenxiang. Just as Tyrant had said, this was a giant cockroach the size of 2 adult palms when caught. However, in reality, this was not the complete form of Cockroach Wenxiang. In order to catch it, Li Jingtan had put in a lot of effort. When it had caught Cockroach Wenxiang, this guy had shrunk into a corner and hadn't moved at all. Li Jingtan had calculated when Cockroach Wenxiang was going to evolve and shed its skin, and had ordered the nearby cats to swarm over and take down the weakened Cockroach Wenxiang in one fell swoop. And then, there was no and then. Cockroach Wenxiang was now imprisoned in a glass fish tank and couldn't get out at all. After being caught, Li Jingtan had straightaway executed the water torture on Cockroach Wenxiang. Of course, it was impossible to directly drown Cockroach Wenxiang in water. This guy was the king of cockroaches, and it went without saying how tenacious it was. Even if it was soaked in wine, it would still be alive and well. Thus, Li Jingtan had hit the nail on the head, and mixed birth control pills into contraceptive water, and soaked Cockroach Wenxiang in it for 7 days and 7 nights, directly sterilizing it. After learning that it was infertile, Cockroach Wenxiang was filled with righteous indignation. "You're going too far. Go too far, Harry Ball. The country only allowed for a second child, and you've already given birth to hundreds of millions of children. Aren't you ashamed?" Back then, Li Jingtan's retort had directly dumbfounded Cockroach Wenxiang. Cockroach Wenxiang had tenacious vitality. Considering that it couldn't be directly eliminated, Li Jingtan had decided to simply raise it and use it to control the emperor. As long as Cockroach Wenxiang was in its hands, the nearby cockroaches would calm down a little. Most importantly, Li Jingtan could even use Cockroach Wenxiang as bait to draw out an endless stream of nearby cockroaches, and the cat regiment would just have to wait for them. After seeing the news about Magic Treasure Development University, Li Jingtan's mood inexplicably fluctuated. After feeling melancholy for a while on a branch, it then went over to the goldfish tank and stared at Cockroach Wenxiang with its bright eyes. Cockroach Wenxiang didn't care at all. It knew that Li Jingtan couldn't kill it, and it was very happy in its heart. You found a way to kill me. You can't kill me. At best, your realm is only at the peak late foundation establishment stage. I was hit by a soul formation cultivator's palm before, and the other side thought that I had already been smashed into powder. God knows that I'm still alive. I know. Li Jingtan interrupted Cockroach Wenxiang's torrent of words. The latter only wanted to remind it not to waste its energy, and Li Jingtan was naturally well aware of this. I'm here to negotiate with you. If you can agree to my request, I can even let you go, Li Jingtan said to Cockroach Wenxiang while playing the piano. You want to let me go? Cockroach Wenxiang didn't dare believe it. Its mouth parts opened and closed, and the two antennae on its head trembled slightly at these words. Provided that you can do what I want, Li Jingtan said. Tell me. Cockroach Wenxiang's antennae swayed swiftly like two windshield wipers. It had this special habit when it was thinking about a problem. You may have already heard about a serial murder case. I know that you have subordinates in all the places where humans live, so can you find witnesses? Li Jingtan didn't beat around the bush and asked directly. Humans view us as bedbugs and want to exterminate us. Why should we testify against them? Cockroach Wenxiang laughed. Every living creature has the right to live, and you are no exception. But your mistake was overbreeding. This will cause trouble for other living creatures, which is why you have to be exterminated. If you can find suitable witnesses, perhaps this will be a good opportunity to improve, Li Jingtan analyzed very seriously. Cockroach Wenxiang thought for a while. Finally, it agreed to the request. I can help you look, but you have to satisfy one of my requests. What is it? The food you've been feeding me these last 2 days is too lousy. I want to improve my diet. Then what do you want to eat? There's a villa in the eastern suburbs whose owner is a crispy noodle snack lover. I want to eat his crispy noodle snacks. I don't need the whole package, just the leftovers will do. Find someone to look for plastic wrappers at a nearby garbage station, even if there's just a little crumb. As Cockroach Wenxiang spoke, it started to drool. When it had still been a small cockroach, it had relied on these bits and pieces every day to grow to its current size. The offspring it gave birth to were also several times larger than normal cockroaches. So, why had southern cockroaches been getting bigger and bigger in recent years? All of this started when he had fallen in love with crispy noodle snacks as a child. Chapter 1046. When all was said and done, the biggest reason why Cockroach Wenxiang and Cockroach Gang had been able to rise so quickly was because of Wang Ling's leftover crispy noodle snacks. What kind of divine object was the residue of an immortal king's crispy noodle snack? With just a little bit, a cockroach could grow to the size of a rabbit. Wang Ling knew this was his fault, so he took the initiative to take it. To be honest, if Super Chen and Dopey Gua hadn't mentioned using a cockroach as a witness, Wang Ling probably wouldn't have thought of this. A while ago, when the gang had been stirring up trouble, Wang Ling had wanted to personally deal with it. In the end, Li Jingtan's independent regiment had stepped forward to control the situation, so Wang Ling hadn't done it himself. Because if he made a move, all the cockroaches in the world would be destroyed in an instant. Since living things existed, there must be a reason for their existence. Even if cockroaches were pests, they were still a part of the food chain. As long as they could be controlled, there was no need to kill them. And now, the reason why he had reappeared here as Immortal Meow, which he hadn't used in a long time, was because he wanted Cockroach Wenxiang to use its actions to atone for its sins. So when Wang Ling showed up here, all the cats were extremely shocked. The monk was so excited that it couldn't speak. It fell to the ground on its butt and clutched its head with its paws, looking like it couldn't believe what had happened. Wang Ling's incarnation of immortal Meow had always been a legend in the cat world, and every time it appeared, something big was bound to happen. All the cats couldn't help bowing their heads when they saw Wang Ling, and Li Jingtan was no exception. When Cockroach Wenxiang saw that even Li Jingtan had knelt down to worship Wang Ling, it was startled on the spot. "So you're the boss behind these cats?" Cockroach Wenxiang had previously suspected that Li Jingtan's cat setup alone wouldn't have been able to take down its strong gang. Now that Wang Ling had appeared, it instantly understood. Wang Ling stared at Cockroach Wenxiang and didn't speak. A voice rang out in Cockroach Wenxiang's mind. In order to demonstrate his authority as Immortal Meow, Wang Ling chose to ask Cockroach Wenxiang telepathically to testify in court. In the end, Cockroach Wenxiang's attitude was very firm. "You can't change the conditions you promised me before. Otherwise, don't even think about making me appear in court. Anyway, you guys can't beat me to death, and I won't starve to death here. Why don't we compete to see who dies of exhaustion first?" This kind of vile attitude made Wang Ling stifle his anger. In the end, this was a cockroach that had grown up eating the dregs of his crispy noodle snacks. Relying on its tenacious vitality, it had actually learned to act like a tyrant. Wang Ling felt that he had to teach Cockroach Wenxiang a lesson. In the next moment, he raised his cat paw and ordered Li Jingtan to release Cockroach Wenxiang from the fish tank. Cockroach Wenxiang was a little dazed. It didn't know what abilities this white cat that had suddenly appeared in front of it had, but since it was Li Jingtan's boss, its realm should be higher than Li Jingtan's, right? Golden Core. Nascent Soul. Cockroach Wenxiang estimated Wang Ling's realm, and felt that this white cat's level was about right. Although it couldn't tell exactly what breed it was, how high could a spirit beast's realm be? All the spirit beasts in the Pet Trainers Guild, Cockroach Wenxiang, had taken the initiative to provoke it, but none of them had been able to directly kill it. He was a cockroach that had taken a blow from a soul formation stage cultivator. What kind of storm had he not seen? Simply ridiculous. After being released from the goldfish tank, Cockroach Wenxiang breathed free air again. It stared at Wang Ling and crossed its legs, its attitude extremely arrogant. "Tell me, how do you want to fight? Let me tell you, I'm an unkillable cockroach." All the cats, Li Jingtan started to cover its face with its paws. It had never seen anyone court death like this, but this was normal. Wang Ling's incarnation of Immortal Meow was nothing more than a legend in the cat world, and only old cats of Li Jingtan's generation knew about it. Newborn kittens had to listen to old cat stories to learn about Immortal Meow. And there were even fewer cats who had actually seen Immortal Meow. Thus, Li Jingtan's independent regiment was more like a cat regiment favored by Wang Ling. The cats in the independent regiment had already seen Wang Ling no less than 3 times, which was why many of them were willing to work for Li Jingtan. In many cat eyes, Li Jingtan was a cat favored by a god, and good things might happen if they followed this Commander Li. But as an authentic cockroach, Cockroach Wenxiang indeed couldn't understand this belief in the cat world. It even started to provoke Wang Ling, knowing that Wang Ling's slap wouldn't be able to do anything to it. "How about this, let's make a bet. If you slap me unconscious, I'll go and testify." It could be said that this was Wang Ling's first time encountering such an arrogant cockroach. Even the old devil and evil sword god had their souls flash before in the face of its slap. The moment they were slapped, they had no doubt that they would die. But Cockroach Wenxiang actually thought that no matter how bad it was, it would at most be knocked unconscious. This kind of inexplicable self-confidence made Wang Ling unhappy. Of course, he couldn't slap Cockroach Wenxiang to death, because he still had to keep it alive to find a witness. But it was still possible to teach Cockroach Wenxiang a lesson. Wang Ling mustered all his strength and imbued his cat claws with primordial qi. Dark blue streams of air instantly emerged from his claws and rose into the air like colored steam. Spirit energy materialization, all the cats were horrified. It could only be said that Immortal Meow was in the end Immortal Meow. This was a sign that the spirit power in the body had reached its peak, which proved that the concentration of spirit energy was extremely high, which directly caused the spirit chi to materialize as steam when it was released. This was a sign of an expert. Because there were very few cultivators who could materialize spirit energy. Cockroach Wenxiang broke out in a cold sweat. It never thought that this white cat would indeed be different from all the spirit beasts it had seen before. Even a soul formation cultivator couldn't materialize spirit energy, unless this cat was true immortal level. A true immortal level cat. How was this possible? Cockroach Wenxiang was alarmed. If this was really the case, perhaps this immortal meow could be recorded in the cultivation encyclopedia as a historical record for research. How could there be such a fierce spirit beast in the world? Ready? Wang Ling opened his mouth in the next moment. This was the first time he had spoken as Immortal Meow. Before Cockroach Wenxiang could react, the claw, which had been accumulating power for a while, was already swatting at Cockroach Wenxiang. In that instant, there was a violent earthquake, and the area for hundreds of li around number 59 high school began to shake violently. Just as Wang Ling's paw was about to land on Cockroach Wenxiang's head, it had already fainted from fright. Then, Wang Ling withdrew his hand just in time. This earthquake had happened so suddenly that no one had expected it to happen. Songhai City was on the coast and not between the cracks in the earth's crust, so earthquakes were very rare. This sudden earthquake had a magnitude of 12.0 and lasted for 2 seconds. Although it didn't cause any damage, Wang Ling's paw was eventually recorded by geologists in the cultivation encyclopedia, and human cultivators began to think about protecting the natural environment. Chapter 1047. Wang Ling's slap scared Cockroach Wenxiang so much that it fainted on the spot. At the same time, the cultivators at the Earthquake Monitoring Center in Songhai City were extremely busy. The earthquake had come so suddenly that the magic treasure responsible for monitoring had been destroyed before it could react. Everyone stared at the dashboard in front of them, bewildered. What the hell was this thing? A magnitude 12 earthquake. The director of the monitoring center frowned deeply. Although this sudden earthquake had only lasted for 3 seconds and hadn't caused any actual damage to Songhai City, if an earthquake of this magnitude had happened in any other city, it was likely that those cities would have already been reduced to ruins. Big cities had the highest level of anti-earthquake technology. Basically, all buildings would automatically activate a building stabilization barrier during an earthquake, and everything within the range of the barrier would be in a state of weightlessness. That was to say, if a building collapsed, the rubble and debris that fell from it would float, and people wouldn't be harmed. However, this kind of emergency defense technology was only widespread in big cities like Songhai City and Jinghua City. Because the technology cost was too high, it would take at least 3 years for it to be popularized nationwide. Director, write a research report for President Xi right away. This earthquake was too sudden, and I suspect that the living environment of us cultivators will be greatly affected. Director Zhang of the Research Institute had an ugly expression on his face. In many cases, this kind of sudden earthquake without warning was often a warning of a bigger disaster. In recent years, the cultivation world had been overexploited, and a large number of creatures had been put on the endangered list. Unrestrained extraction was bound to have a huge impact on the ecological environment. Protecting the environment was a topic for all of humanity, and it had to do with the life and death of all cultivators as well as their future development plans in this era of national cultivation. Director Zhang Qiuhua had no choice but to take this matter seriously. In addition, spirit qi had been consumed too quickly in recent years. Although it was estimated that it would take several thousand years for spirit qi to be completely exhausted at this rate, the problem was already there, and cultivators from all over the world needed to face it together. This was what Director Zhang Qiuhua was doing. He was calling out to everyone with love to make them start to pay attention to environmental protection. It was almost time for the next Global Environmental Protection Cultivators Summit, and Director Zhang Qiuhua decided that this abnormal earthquake with a magnitude 12 in 3 seconds had to be the focus of this summit. Thus, Wang Ling's slap had a positive effect on the awareness of environmental protection among cultivators from all over the world. This was something Wang Ling hadn't expected. Furthermore, even Wang Ling himself couldn't have imagined that his slap in the face would result in additional summer vacation homework. After Wang Ling finished his operation and went home, Teacher Pan made an announcement in the class group chat, asking everyone to write an essay of no less than 3,000 words on the theme of protecting the environment. He regretted it back then. If Wang Ling had known this would happen, he wouldn't have hit him so hard. Of course, this was all in the future. After about half an hour, cockroach Wenxiang woke up from its coma. It could only be said that a cockroach was indeed a cockroach. Its vitality was indeed very strong. Moreover, this cockroach had grown up eating the leftovers of its crispy noodle snacks. Its vitality was extraordinary and strong. Although Wang Ling's palm didn't directly hit cockroach Wenxiang, the wind pressure caused by it had already crushed cockroach Wenxiang into a big pancake in 3 seconds. But even so, cockroach Wenxiang still managed to survive. After half an hour, Wang Ling watched as its body recovered bit by bit from its squashed state like an inflatable doll. Am I still alive? After coming back to life, cockroach Wenxiang no longer had the confidence it had at the beginning. It had almost thought that it was going to die. It was very confident in its own vitality, but after that slap just now, it actually saw something like a soul flashing around its mind. In that moment, it even thought of its mother in heavenly state. Back then, his mother had been continuously stepped on by a cultivator more than 3,600 times, and she had died in pain giving birth to him. Losing one's mother at a young age, was there anything more painful than this in the life of a cockroach? Thus, cockroach Wenxiang's personality began to harden. Even if it was for its dead mother, cockroach Wenxiang still decided to live on. It and its siblings hid under its mother's flattened body, and after the cultivator left, they dragged her into the sewers to bury her. It had already sworn that it would live on. As long as it could be eaten, cockroach Wenxiang wouldn't miss out on it. It vowed to strengthen itself, and in the end, become a cockroach that couldn't be trampled to death no matter what. The light of the soul flashing around cockroach Wenxiang brought it back to its tragic childhood. It was obvious that cockroach Wenxiang was a cockroach with a story, but now wasn't the time for cockroach Wenxiang to recall its past. Given cockroach Wenxiang's experience, it probably wouldn't be able to recall everything even if it had 10,000 more words. How much did people hate memories? It could be seen from the migrant workers' manga Naruto. At a critical moment in the plot, a memory would be inserted, making people burn with impatience. Thus, continuing to kill memories wouldn't work, as readers would be suspected of exaggerating the number of words. Are you going to help me or not? In the next moment, Wang Ling's question rang out again, and cockroach Wenxiang shuddered when it heard the voice that rang out in its soul. Wang Ling had only slapped it once, and before it had even landed, cockroach Wenxiang was already suffering from sequelae. This was a normal question, but in cockroach Wenxiang's ears, it was like an interrogation from the soul, and it trembled all over. I'll help. Cockroach Wenxiang replied shakily. It knew that at that moment, it already had no other choice. Elsewhere, Audiobook very quickly received the news from Wang Ling. As expected of Shifu, he was actually able to find a new witness under these circumstances. Audiobook was extremely excited. A few minutes ago, Wang Ling had sent him a message saying that he had found a new witness. Then, he announced the news to the public. All the police officers present, as well as the school leaders and teachers of Magic Treasure Development University, were taken aback when they heard this. A new witness. A new witness. Headmaster Zhou Dongye didn't dare believe it. The most important witness, Lu Yi, was already dead, and it was very likely that the person who killed Lu Yi was Father Zheng himself. How could there be a new witness in this completely secret room? Mr. Zheng, the police have already found a new witness who can prove your innocence, as well as the truth of the suicide case 3 years ago. So, Mr. Zheng, please release all the students here immediately, and the police will definitely give you an explanation. Without further ado, Audiobook began his final negotiations with Father Zheng. The scene was silent for several minutes. The door of the auditorium slowly opened. With tears in his eyes, Father Zheng raised his hands high as he walked out of the auditorium. 3 years ago, those police officers had wronged his son. 3 years later, he still chose to believe that the police officers could prove his son's innocence and reveal the truth to the world. Everyone was baffled no matter how they thought about it. Director Zhua, what on earth is going on? Gao Tian asked. I found a new girl called Little Liang, who said she witnessed Lu Yi's death, Audiobook replied. Who is Miss Little Liang? A cockroach, commonly known as a cockroach. Chapter 1048. I was wrong, I really was wrong. I'm ashamed of what my motherland has done for me, and I sincerely apologize to the students I held hostage in the auditorium. I'll accept however many years I need to be sentenced to. In the interrogation room, Father Zheng confessed to his illegal actions. Although he hadn't caused anyone harm, the hostage-taking had really happened. Furthermore, until a new witness testified in the public trial, Father Zheng couldn't be cleared of being a murderer. At that moment, Gao Tian, Audiobook, and Little Silver were all facing Father Zheng in the interrogation room. Little Silver was in charge of taking down Father Zheng's statement. For Little Silver, this was a way of accumulating material. He had been learning to write novels recently, but he wasn't very talented. He had already serialized more than 100,000 words, but he hadn't received a contract offer backstage. Little Silver felt that it was because he hadn't accumulated enough material enough. Thus, helping Gao Tian take down his statement was also a way of accumulating material. Gao Tian's and Audiobook's interrogations were different. In order not to steal the credit, the two of them had a clear division of labor. Gao Tian only asked about the hostage-taking, while Audiobook asked about the magic treasure plagiarism case. Did you take the auditorium hostage because of the plagiarism case 3 years ago? Gao Tian asked. Yes, I had to find out the truth about it. I wouldn't hesitate, no matter the price, Father Zheng replied, his hands shackled in spirit shackles. This was originally a treatment reserved for the old devil, but considering that Audiobook had taken the blame in recent months and that the realm of the wanted criminals who had been caught had gotten higher and higher, Wang Ling and Wang Ming decided to have the Research Institute mass-produce them. Spirit shackles had already become a standard in prison. If no new witness had appeared, would you still have done this? Gao Tian asked. Father Zheng thought for a while, then said hesitantly, it's hard to say, you should have taken legal action. That's the right way to go, Gao Tian said. But I really didn't have any other choice. I used online complaints and offline petitions, but nothing came of it in the end, because I didn't have any concrete evidence. As for the witnesses I wanted to find, they all died at the hands of others after I arrived. I didn't hurt anyone in this matter. Father Zheng said in full detail, including Lu Yi. At first, I just wanted to use magic to pull him out from behind the screen. In the end, when I passed through the screen, I suddenly realized that Lu Yi was already dead. Gao Tian nodded. He compared Father Zheng's confession with the evidence they had so far. Father Zheng's words were very credible, he could answer most of the questions in great detail. It was similar to the information the police had. It was just that Gao Tian and everyone else in the interrogation room was very concerned about one thing. Father Zheng's realm had increased abnormally. What's going on here? Explain to me how you managed to raise your cultivation so quickly. Don't tell me it's because of a fortuitous encounter. It's not, and you're not the main character. Gao Tian gazed at Father Zhang. It wasn't just Gao Tian who was curious about this matter. All the police officers who had been paying attention to this covert operation were actually very curious. I don't know if you believe me. Speaking of his sudden increase in realm, Father Zhang was a little flustered. He stared into Gao Tian's eyes and replied, "It's because of a bag of frozen dumplings." Instant frozen dumplings. As soon as this answer came out, all the police officers inside and outside the interrogation room were shocked. What on earth is going on? Gao Tian asked. It actually happened a few days ago, on September 14th. Faced with questioning, Father Zhang told them everything about how he had become stronger. For so many years, I've been secretly looking for evidence in an attempt to retract my confession. All my living expenses are basically used to pay for the detective's investigation. To save money, I usually go to the cultivation department store to buy things in the returned goods section. That day, as usual, I bought a few bags of frozen food. In the end, after I went back and ate one, I suddenly felt my whole body heat up, and my realm advanced by leaps and bounds. I was full of energy, and then, my realm increased just like that. Gao Tian, Little Silver and Audge were all sucked in cold breaths of air when they heard this. That was right. There were no push-ups, no squats, and he didn't insist on not turning on the air conditioner on a hot summer day. It was all because of a bag of frozen dumplings that Father Zhang had advanced. The point was that this matched up with the information the police had. The information in Gao Tian's hands clearly stated that after Father Zhang had been detained, the police had found a bag of frozen dumplings in his rental apartment, which had already been eaten. Furthermore, it was confirmed that the dumplings had been bought from the store's returned goods section, and had been sold at a 40% discount. Although it was hard to believe, Gao Tian completely believed Father Zhang's words. Not only did they have the information in their hands to testify, but the polygraph in the interrogation room hadn't detected anything unusual. This was a high-precision polygraph. As long as someone didn't answer the question truthfully, the polygraph would emit a beeping alarm. Of course, this alarm couldn't be played directly. The warning sound would continue to be transmitted through the earpieces hanging in the ears of Gao Tian, Audjua, and Little Silver in the interrogation room. Prisoners usually didn't know about the polygraph, which was to prevent prisoners from deliberately preparing answers in advance when they were being interrogated. Thus, Gao Tian and the other police officers were stunned. How could a bag of frozen dumplings be so powerful? F***K. What's the stuffing in these dumplings? Celery, pork or mushroom? I'll eat them when I get back tonight. The police officers outside the interrogation room couldn't sit still anymore, especially Chief Zhao himself. He had been paying close attention to this case, and after learning the secret of Father Zhang's promotion, he was so excited that he almost jumped up. The reason why he hadn't been promoted wasn't just because his performance wasn't good enough, but also because he was stuck at a bottleneck in his realm. Chief Zhao had been stuck at the nascent soul stage for a very long time, and if he wanted to be transferred to a central core department like Huaxiao Alliance, he had to be at the soul formation stage or above. Gao Tian and Audjua then whispered to each other and decided to take Father Zhang for a checkup. If it really was because of those frozen dumplings, as long as they did a detailed test, they should be able to analyze the ingredients of the dumplings from Father Zhang's gastric juices. Alright, that's all for my questioning. Director Zhua's next. At that moment, Gao Tian capped his pen and crossed his fingers. It's over. Audjua said. That's it. Gao Tian nodded affirmatively. Since the chain of evidence matched up, Gao Tian felt that there was no need to continue the interrogation on the hijacking itself. On the contrary, Gao Tian was more interested in the reopening of the case 3 years ago. But he wasn't the person in charge of it, so Gao Tian could only hand it over to Audjua. First of all, I want to know more about student Jing Jingshuan's family situation. May I ask, why did you divorce student Jing Jingshuan's mother, Madame He Xiulan? Audiobook's first question was a little personal, but it was still very necessary. His family environment was also a major reason why student Jing chose to commit suicide in the end. Because Alan and I didn't get along, so we divorced, Father Jing replied. As soon as he said that, Audiobook and the others instantly heard the lie detector alarm in their headsets. Beep 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 beep, Father Jing, please answer your question truthfully. Audiobook's gaze turned sharp. Father Jing panicked a little. Because Alan found out that I cheated, beep 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 beep, because I realized that I like men, beep 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 beep, Father Jing was almost in tears. F***K. Because our married life isn't happy, of course, it's mainly because of me. Is that okay? This time, the alarm didn't go off again. Tianjin. Chapter 1049. Audiobook wasn't interested in prying into other people's affairs. He had thought that Father Jing was hiding the truth about the case. He hadn't expected Father Jing to say something so shocking as soon as he opened his mouth, stupefying all the police officers at the police station. After understanding the situation, Audiobook realized that student Jing Jingshuan's suicide was actually a tragedy that had combined many factors. Student Zheng's mother, Madame He Xiulan, was a relatively strong person, and it was because of her strength that Jing Jingxian had started to fear women, so he could only constantly use his grades to boost his morale. Thus, after Audiobook and Gao Tian looked into student Zheng's information, they found that his academic record was extraordinarily good. He was first in his grade in almost all the exams and had won many competitions. It wasn't just the magic treasure design competition, even the spirit sword driving competition, the elixir refining competition and so on. Student Zheng had won first place with very outstanding results, standing out from his peers. Student Zheng became the focal point of the crowd. He enjoyed the feeling of being in the limelight, and it was precisely because of this habit that student Zheng felt a kind of psychological pleasure. But all of this had happened too quickly. Student Zheng had been framed for plagiarism. It was his own design that had been stolen and then framed against him. The public opinion online put immense pressure on student Jing, and it was at that time that Jing Tianxiang and He Xiulan agreed to a divorce, which directly led to this tragedy. Falling from the peak of his life to the bottom in one fell swoop, Jing Jingxian completely lost himself. Perhaps in the last moment before he committed suicide, he instinctively found his last straw of hope, Lin Shuyao. He called Lin Shuyao to him, and using the excuse that he didn't want to be a burden on Lin Shuyao, he wrote something like a will. In order not to be a burden on Angel Capital, he drew a clear line between himself and Lin Shuyao, and then chose to commit suicide. After Jing Jingshuan's death, Lin Shuyao sank into deep self-blame. She hated herself for being cowardly, for not pulling Jing Jingxian out at the most critical moment, and instead started to doubt her boyfriend's behavior as the rumors spread. She also hated herself for being foolish, for actually not pulling Jing Jingxian back to the other side at the last moment. She hated herself the most, but it was too late to say anything now. The dead couldn't be brought back to life. Jing Jingshuan's death had been buried for 3 whole years along with the magic treasure plagiarism case from 3 years ago. As Father Jing said, he had tried many normal channels to lodge a complaint, but the mastermind pulling the strings behind the scenes had left him powerless to breathe. Helpless, Father Jing finally chose this path that seemed to be out of desperation. September 19th, the 36th day of the summer vacation. As for Father Zhang's hostage kidnapping case and the magic treasure plagiarism case, from 3 years ago, the Cultivation Police Bureau and the General Administration of 100 schools respectively filed public prosecutions in court. The Police Bureau requested that the hostage kidnapping case be charged, while the General Administration of 100 schools requested that the magic treasure plagiarism case be retried. This was a public trial, and all the people in the country, including many foreign netizens, were paying attention to this incident online. There were no empty seats in the auditorium. Apart from the media reporters, Zhou Dongye, the headmaster of Magic Treasure Development University, as well as other people involved in the plagiarism case from 3 years ago who were still alive, had been summoned to court by the police bureau. When Gao Tian brought Father Zheng to the defendant's seat in the courtroom with spirit shackles on his hands, he saw a familiar person. Student Fu Fuxing, who had accused Xing Jingxian of plagiarism back then, was also sitting here. He was sitting in the second defendant's seat, and was probably going to appear in court as a defendant in the plagiarism case. At the same time, student Fu Fuxing was probably the person who knew the most about the case from 3 years ago, but those who were at the core of the case were basically all dead. Father Zheng had resented Fu Fuxing before, but looking at it now, he thought that maybe Fu Fuxing really didn't know anything, and was just a pitiful person who had been used. Otherwise, why would Fu Fuxing be here alive? Songhai Intermediate Cultivation Court. The judge in charge of the trial this time was called Liang Xan, a middle-aged man with swept-back hair and a righteous expression. Since this case wasn't just about the hostage situation, there was also the possibility of overturning the verdict on the case from 3 years ago. Thus, the presiding judge, the judges, the jurors, and the court clerk in charge of the case from 3 years ago had all voluntarily recused themselves to ensure that the case was fair and just. All rise. The court is now in session. There wasn't the slightest ripple on Liang Xan's face. He had been directly assigned by his superiors to take over this case. Because the two cases were being tried together, plus Father Zheng's actions to garner attention before the trial, this case had garnered a lot of attention in society. Liang Xan was well aware of the seriousness of the matter. The presiding judge and all the judges were there to crack down on those who broke the law and return the innocence of the innocent. The whole place was silent. After Chief Judge Liang took his seat, he hit the table with a crisp hammer, and the trial officially began. Defendant Jing Tianxiang, on September 18, 4396, you hijacked a small auditorium at Songhai Magic Treasure Development University, and a total of 53 people were taken hostage. Although you didn't injure the hostages, you damaged the auditorium and other public facilities, and are guilty of hostage-taking. You are now being prosecuted for destroying public facilities and hostage-taking. Do you have any objections to the prosecution's conclusion? Asked Chief Judge Liang. No objections, replied Father Zheng from the defendant's stand. Chief Judge Liang nodded, then turned his gaze to the second defendant's stand. Summon the second defendant, Fu Fuxing. When his name was called, Fu Fuxing's face gradually showed some nervousness. He was well aware of the impact this plagiarism case would have on his life. Even if he was one of Lu Yi's pawns, it was true that Lu Yi had stolen Jing Jingshuan's magic treasure design from high school and given it to Fu Fuxing to compete in the competition. Furthermore, Fu Fuxing had also used that design, and after the incident, he had even reprimanded Jing Jingxian for plagiarism. Now that the case had been dug up again, he would definitely be accused of fraud. Most importantly, Raven Studio would face a huge blow. At the time, Fu Fuxing didn't know that the design he had used hadn't come from Lu Yi. He had thought that Lu Yi was a talented person. He hadn't expected this guy to actually be a saint thief. Chief Judge Liang hit the gavel. Fu Fuxing, please guarantee the veracity of what you say next. If you are suspected of fraud, you can be convicted of perjury in court. Chief Judge, I swear that everything I say is true, Fu Fuxing said after taking a deep breath. May I ask if the design for the Magic Treasure Design Competition 3 years ago was your original work? Asked Chief Judge Liang. Fu Fuxing thought for a bit, then raised his head and said resolutely, yes. There was an uproar at his words. Odd Jua, Little Silver, and Gao Tian hadn't expected Fu Fuxing to actually choose to retract his statement at that moment. Tianjin. Chapter 1050. During the pre-trial hearing, Fu Fuxing's answer had been the complete opposite of what he was saying now. He had pushed all the blame onto Lu Yi, put himself out of the picture, and at the same time pretended to be the victim. Later, he felt that Fu Fuxing was probably doing this mainly to absolve himself of the crime. Now that things had developed to this point, it was questionable whether Raven Studio could continue to operate. Raven Studio was now at the critical stage of going public, and Fu Fuxing was unwilling to let his efforts go to waste just like that. The fame and wealth he had spent 3 years accumulating in the magic treasure design world might all come to an end with this trial. Thus, Fu Fuxing was afraid. Given the current situation, it was already no longer a problem for Fu Fuxing to lose money, since he could earn it back. But he absolutely couldn't have a criminal record. Using someone else's work to participate in a competition and flaunting it as an original work was also a form of academic fraud. After the incident with Dr. Zhai, the pioneer of academic fraud, Huaxiao Alliance had immediately issued new laws and regulations to rectify and restrain academic fraud on a large scale. The maximum penalty for this was a prison sentence of more than 30 years, a fine of 500,000 Huaxiao dollars, and the revocation of all academic qualifications and honors. Fu Fuxing was afraid that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. But since he had the guts to say this to the judge, he definitely had what it took to back it up. Long before the trial, Fu Fuxing had already known that almost all the people involved in the plagiarism case back then were dead. Given the lack of witnesses, Fu Fuxing was very confident. Chief Judge Liang Xian stared into Fu Fuxing's eyes. As an experienced judge, there were many times when he could tell whether a person was lying just by looking at their eyes. But unfortunately, this was a court in the cultivation world. Everything said and done required evidence, and a mere, "your eyes look like those of a murderer," wasn't enough to convict you. This case was highly publicized, and at the same time, it was very difficult to plead guilty. Furthermore, some of the people involved were no longer alive. Given the lack of evidence, as the defendant, Fu Fuxing was bound to play tricks. All of this was within Chief Judge Liang Xian's expectations, but he hadn't expected Fu Fuxing to speak so resolutely, not giving himself any leeway at all. But as the chief judge, Liang Xian wasn't affected by Fu Fuxing, and his face was still as calm as an ancient well. He then turned to look at the prosecution. Since the prosecution had filed a public prosecution, they must have already found evidence. "Prosecution, please speak." Liang Xian raised his hand to indicate for the prosecution to begin. Fu Fuxing had hired a lawyer. This lawyer was called Wu Yuanji, and was one of the few powerful lawyers in all of Songhai City. Furthermore, Wu Yuanji was a rather thorny figure for all judges. This person advocated for the defense of innocence. In order to show his strength unilaterally, he only helped others to plead not guilty. In order to support the theory of innocence, he was very good at finding doubtful points and loopholes in the case to create evidence that was favorable to the defendant. This time, Fu Fuxing's defense lawyer was Wu Yuanji, which made Gao Tian feel a little headache. "Is there a problem with this person?" Little Silver asked in a low voice. "This person's name is Wu Yuanji. He's very good at sophistry, and he can forge evidence without giving himself away. He's a very tricky lawyer. He has defended more than 100 cases, and all of them were acquitted as soon as he accepted them. So far, he has only lost one case." "What case?" Little Silver was curious. Gao Tian said, there was a family where the wife cheated on her husband. The husband went out and killed the adulterer. Later, he was charged with murder. In the end, because of Wu Yuanji, it was proven that there wasn't enough evidence, so the man was released. In the end, that man went out and killed his wife. Little Silver and Jua, just as Gao Tian and the judges in the courtroom had expected, perhaps because of Wu Yuanji's presence, Fu Fuxing's performance was much steadier than everyone had imagined. He was frighteningly calm. As for Wu Yuanji, he didn't take this case seriously at all. He sat calmly in the dock with his legs crossed. This frivolous attitude was quite suspicious of contempt for the court, and this was also the reason why Wu Yuanji was not liked by the judges. However, this guy was a notorious legend in the legal world. This was because this person dared to take on any case, even defending a murderer. What Wu Yuanji didn't expect was that in the only case he had lost, his client had been so crazy that after being acquitted, he went on to kill his wife. It was during that time that Wu Yuanji was given the title, Demon Lawyer, which meant, a lawyer who defended demons. But Wu Yuanji didn't think it mattered what the outside world called him. The most important thing was that he felt that he was very strong. At least in the legal circle, he believed that no one could be his match. Furthermore, he didn't take on cases to earn a high lawyer's fee. What Wu Yuanji liked most was to challenge himself. The trickier the case, the more Wu Yuanji felt an indescribable sense of pleasure after his client was acquitted. Was he a pervert? Perhaps Wu Yuanji did indeed have some psychological problems, but he was very satisfied with his title of Demon Lawyer. As long as he defended himself, he would definitely be acquitted in the following cases. What was the most important thing in court? Wu Yuanji smiled every time he thought of this. That was right, the most important thing was evidence. But what if there was no evidence? Without any evidence, even a public prosecution would be useless. Hence, Wu Yuanji had long since gotten rid of the last person, Lu Yi, before the incident. He felt that his plan had been flawless and he hadn't left any flaws. That was right, Wu Yuanji had killed Lu Yi. But he had only killed Lu Yi. As for the other people who had died before Lu Yi, it wasn't Wu Yuanji who had done it. Wu Yuanji had just imitated that person's modus operandi and erased Lu Yi without leaving any evidence. Furthermore, he had pushed all the evidence against Father Zhang's head. Lu Yi was already dead. How else could this case be judged? What new evidence could the prosecution come up with? He smiled. At this moment, Gao Tian stood up and turned to the presiding judge, Liang Exayan, and the members of the jury. He bowed deeply to them and said, "Presiding judge and members of the jury, I hereby request for a new witness to be brought forward." As soon as these words came out, everyone present fell into a deep shock. There was actually a witness. Chapter 1051. Everything had happened so suddenly that Wu Yuanji had not expected the prosecution to find a new witness. Under Fu Fuxing's equally surprised gaze, Wu Yuanji decisively protested, "Chief Judge. The plaintiff did not submit the information according to the rules before submitting the new witness. I apply for a temporary adjournment." It was not surprising that Wu Yuanji could make this request. It was in accordance with the rules and regulations to apply for evidence in advance. However, if the court adjourned now, the next court session would have to wait until tomorrow. This was because the examination of the witness still needed to be decided by the jury. Only those who met the rules and regulations could appear in court as a witness. Liang Exayan carefully weighed the pros and cons. He could roughly guess that Wu Yuanji was probably thinking of some conspiracy again. But it was precisely because this person was cunning that Liang Exayan, as the presiding judge, knew that she had to follow the existing rules and regulations and adjudicate the case according to the existing laws. Otherwise, as long as Wu Yuanji got hold of the slightest flaw, he might apply to Huaxiao Alliance to replace the presiding judge. In Wu Yuanji's previous cases, it was not as if there were no precedents where the presiding judge was asked to be replaced after being caught red-handed in the middle of the case. The defense lawyer's request is granted. The public prosecution is requested to submit the witness information today for review in accordance with the rules and regulations. Therefore, after some consideration, Chief Judge Liang Exayan finally agreed to Wu Yuanji's request. He slammed the gavel down, making a crisp sound. Court adjourned. To everyone's surprise, the court session lasted less than 10 minutes, but it was adjourned because of such an unexpected event. Now the whole internet was waiting to see the melon. No one had expected such a thing to happen. Netizens had different opinions about Liang Xian's decision. Some thought that Liang Xian was on Wu Yuanji's side, while others held the opposite opinion. They thought that Liang Xian, the presiding judge, was just following the rules and regulations. At the same time, Wang Ling was also watching the live online broadcast of the public trial. There were so many bullet messages on the screen that he was dazzled by them. In today's online environment, people didn't know who the other party was. The phenomenon of people attacking each other at the slightest disagreement had turned the bullet screens of major platforms into battlefields. Loopy Toad lay on Wang Ling's knee and watched the live stream with him. It was super envious of Little Silver, who could actually appear in court with Gao Tian as a member of the public prosecution. Loopy Toad had originally wanted to go today, but considering that some of the news reporters might be allergic to dog fur, it could only watch the live stream with Little Masterling at home. It was all because he hadn't cultivated into a human form. How great would it be if it could also transform into a human? Loopy Toad realized that after becoming a dog, it suddenly had a new goal. It decided that before Wang Ling graduated from high school, it would be able to cultivate a human form. Logically speaking, it wasn't difficult to cultivate a human form, but Loopy Toad's situation was a little special. It used to be a demon king of the demon race, and had later become a spirit beast thanks to Wang Ling's cultivation technique. Compared to other spirit beasts, Loopy Toad had more twists and turns on its path of cultivating a human form, as well as its gender and appearance. You'll be able to cultivate a human form. Wang Ling rubbed Loopy Toad's head, which numbed Dog 2 all over. For some reason, dogs and cats especially like to be touched by humans. Their chins or the part above their heads near their ears would often give them a comfortable feeling and make them tremble all over. Loopy Toad didn't feel much at first, but it gradually realized, it seemed to have been assimilated. And the longer time passed, the more serious the assimilation seemed to be. For example, recently, it had lost interest in fly-flavored dog food. It had actually fallen. Suddenly, Loopy Toad felt a pang in its heart. It was all Wang Ling's fault for spoiling it so much that he could let it lie on his knees. What normal person could receive this kind of treatment? While the online bullet messages were discussing the adjournment, Wang Ling received a message from Audiobook. Shifu, as expected, the court has been adjourned. Everything is going according to plan. Loopy Toad looked at Audiobook's message and was blank. Everything was going according to plan. Of course it was. Because long before the court session, Wang Ling had already predicted that the lawyer who would be representing Fu Fuxing this time would be Wu Yuanji, who was known as the Devil's Lawyer. Wang Ling had also discussed countermeasures in private with Audiobook early on. It could be said that Wu Yuanji had already fallen into their trap, and the adjournment this time was within their expectations. Director Zhua, what should we do next? Gao Tian was also actively communicating with Audiobook after the first round of the court hearing. Putting down his phone, Audiobook said to Gao Tian, let's stick to the original plan. Try to act as natural as possible and don't alert the enemy. Wu Yuanji is very cunning. As Audiobook and everyone else who knew Wu Yuanji thought, this devil's lawyer's greatest skill was to destroy and create evidence. What Audiobook and the others were going to do next was very simple. They were going to grab hold of Wu Yuanji's weakness, and then make him disappear from the legal circle forever to avoid any future troubles. Elsewhere, Wu Yuanji felt a headache coming on when he heard that the prosecutors had found a new witness. In the detention center, Wu Yuanji met with Fu Fuxing as his defense lawyer. Fu Fuxing was agitated as he gnashed his teeth. What's going on? Isn't Louis already? Keep your voice down. Wu Yuanji rolled his eyes at Fu Fuxing. Louis is indeed dead. I didn't expect them to find another witness. But it's fine. In any case, I can win the case, it's just a little more trouble for me. You have a solution. Fu Fuxing's eyes lit up, then darkened as he looked at Wu Yuanji. You should be well aware of my request. My request is to prove my innocence. Not only do I have to prove my innocence, I also have to protect my reputation. Reputation? Wu Yuanji laughed. He moved his face very close and stared into Fu Fuxing's angry eyes through the glass. From the moment you asked me to be your defense lawyer, what reputation do you have left? I want you to pay me double the original legal fees, which is 100 million yuan. Otherwise, I'll have to ask you to find someone better. You. Fu Fuxing was speechless. I advise you to think clearly. Is your life and freedom more important, or money and reputation more important? You can weigh the pros and cons before telling me. You devil, I hope you understand that up until now, only I, the devil, can help you win this case. Speaking up to this point, Wu Yuanji curled his lips and smiled wickedly. As long as you understand, I will take action tonight. With that, Wu Yuanji slit his throat. Can you ensure that it's done cleanly? Of course it's clean. I'm already very familiar with these methods. Okay, I promise you. In the end, Fu Fuxing replied. But they didn't know that their entire meeting this time was under Gao Tian's surveillance. They actually wanted to murder a witness. Gao Tian could only use a popular phrase to describe the despicable behavior of these two people, making people spit out rice. Chapter 1052. Wu Yuanji must have had his own special intelligence network to be able to dominate the lawyer's circle for so long. He had a group of spies under him who collected all kinds of information for him. Many of these people were criminals who had been prosecuted for the death penalty. Wu Yuanji acted as a defense lawyer for this group of people and finally ruled them innocent. Later, these people followed Wu Yuanji loyally and became Wu Yuanji's loyal intelligence personnel. Of course, the reason why Wu Yuanji chose to defend this group of people for free was not because he was kind, but because he liked their talent. The reason why Wu Yuanji's defense was so smooth was purely because this was a group of highly intelligent criminals. When they committed the crime, they would not leave too many traces. This also gave Wu Yuanji enough space to defend himself. Destroying evidence and turning the unreasonable into reasonable was the first rule of Wu Yuanji's defense. After negotiating the price with Fu Fuxing, Wu Yuanji began to investigate the new witness, and soon a document appeared on the desk of Wu Yuanji's law firm. Wu Yuanji originally thought it would take a long time. The witness's information was in the files of the police general office, and it didn't seem easy to hack into it. But now it seemed that his intelligence agent's skills had improved again. Seeing the document, Wu Yuanji was in a good mood. He had originally expected the document to be submitted at night, so he only needed to use the early morning to get rid of the witness. But the speed now exceeded Wu Yuanji's expectations. The sooner he got rid of the witness, the better it would be for Wu Yuanji, and at the same time, it would reassure his client. Fu Fuxing had spent 200 million in legal fees here, so he could be considered a big client. Little Liang, Wu Yuanji repeated the name on the document. There was no photo or home address in the document. Perhaps to protect the privacy of the important witness, these important information weren't recorded. Therefore, the only information Wu Yuanji obtained was the witness's name, Little Liang. And judging from the name, Wu Yuanji guessed that it should be a girl's name. Is that all? Wu Yuanji looked up at a young man sitting in the office. This young man was thin, and was also one of the people Wu Yuanji had saved. The young man shrugged and nodded helplessly. That's all. The other party might be prepared. Therefore, he did not know the detailed information. I also checked Jing Jingshuan's social connections, and there's no one named Little Liang around him. Maybe he's a neighbor or a passerby. Neighbors and passersby. Wu Yuanji scratched his head and suddenly felt his scalp itch. Xing Jingxian had committed suicide in a secret room, and so had Lu Yi and the other important insiders. How could any passers-by or neighbors have seen this? Based on these conditions, Wu Yuanji thought of a possibility. Could it be perjury? In order to prove that Fu Fuxing was guilty, the prosecution deliberately created a new witness. It was not impossible. But if there was, and if he managed to get hold of the key evidence, the prosecution would definitely lose this case. Wu Yuanji frowned. No matter what, he still needed to personally verify this matter. Wu Yuanji got up. He had already decided to assassinate this Miss Little Liang. Although he wasn't sure where she was right now, since she was an important witness who would appear in court tomorrow, Wu Yuanji was certain that she was most likely in the important witness protection room at the police headquarters. The room was heavily guarded, and it clearly wouldn't be easy to break in. But Wu Yuanji wasn't the least bit worried that his movements would be discovered, because a few days ago, he had discovered that he had awakened a special power. It was this power that allowed Wu Yuanji's body to transform into a ray of light and shuttle between screens, allowing the assassination to be carried out invisibly. Elsewhere, everyone in front of the surveillance room at the police headquarters was paying close attention to the scene on the screen. This was a plan to catch Wu Yuanji in the act, and Shua had long since sensed that he might make a move tonight. Chief Shao in the headquarters frowned deeply as he looked at the situation. Will this really work? Don't worry, Chief Shao, we've already taken heavy precautions to protect the witness, Gao Tian said confidently. Considering that the suspect has the ability to shuttle between screens like Sadako, we've also tampered with the computer's power supply so that we can immediately cut it off remotely if necessary. Will this work? Of course it will, Chief Shao. A junior police officer next to him laughed. As long as the power is cut off, the person will be stuck inside and won't be able to get out. Chief Shao took a deep breath, then nodded slowly. I understand the principle, but don't you think you've gone a little overboard? This is to protect the witness, how can it not be overboard? Besides, Miss Little Liang is just a 2-year-old girl, it's perfectly legal and reasonable for us to protect her. Reporting, Chief Shao, Captain Gao, Director Zhua. There's movement. What's going on? We've already detected abnormal intrusive fluctuations through technical means. We suspect that the other party has already infiltrated the network. If you had this kind of technology, why didn't you use it earlier? These are very unusual fluctuations, we need to test them and take precautions, otherwise it'll be difficult to detect them with normal technical means. The technician wiped at his sweat. He was already a veteran technician with decades of experience, but this was the first time he had seen such abnormal fluctuations. They were even more subtle and difficult to detect than the fluctuations when the gate between worlds had descended, but there was a huge danger hidden within. This is the first time I've seen such fluctuations, they're full of concealment and murderous intent, and they're moving extremely fast, close to the speed of light, it's like. The technician frowned deeply. Like a shadow. Shadow. Everyone at the scene was lost in deep thought at this discovery. The abnormal fluctuations were similar to a shadow, which meant that the other party was most likely using a shadow-type spell to move. There were many shadow spells, and in Huaxiao Alliance's records, there were even sects that specialized in teaching shadow spells. These cultivators could use their shadows to retrieve objects and even fight with them. However, no one had ever heard of using their shadows to kill someone across a screen. To accomplish this, the other party's mastery of shadows had to have reached the point of perfection. Shadow spells are usually bound to the user's body. To travel across a screen and move at the speed of light, the user's body has to be strong enough to withstand the tearing of space. But as far as I know, even the sect leader of Shadow Sect can't do this. Shadow Sect's shadow separation spell can only last 16 seconds at most, Chief Shao said doubtfully. Then, here was the question. How did a golden core lawyer like Wu Yuanji obtain this kind of power? Could it be that he also ate frozen dumplings? Chapter 1053. To be honest, the moment they sensed the abnormal fluctuations, everyone almost stopped breathing. In the witness room, Miss Little Liang was even more nervous. After all, Miss Little Liang was only 2 years old and still growing up. Of course, the average lifespan of a normal cockroach was about 2 years, but cockroaches in the cultivation world were different. Although Miss Little Liang was already 2 years old, based on the average lifespan of cockroaches in the cultivation world, she was still just a child. By the way, Miss Little Liang was actually Cockroach Wenxiang's daughter, and her full name was Cockroach Little Liang. If Cockroach Wenxiang hadn't forced it, it would never have left its dark and damp little cave to come here and testify for someone else. Cockroaches and humans had never been able to get along with each other for a long time. Miss Little Liang still remembered being chased and beaten up by humans. In fact, the cockroach race had always been very timid, but humans still viewed them as a thorn in their side, and would kill them as soon as they saw any trace of them. Not all cockroaches like to live in dirty places like the sewers. Nowadays, more and more cockroaches were beginning to pursue a materialistic life. Cockroaches in the cultivation world could even voluntarily decompose all kinds of harmful garbage for cultivators. All living things were equal and in an endless cycle. The creatures at the top and the creatures at the bottom formed a cycle of their own. However, it was a pity that not everyone understood this logic. In the witness protection room, Miss Little Liang was a little apprehensive. Just then, a suffocating murderous aura came from the computer screen in Miss Little Liang's room. It was a black shadow that couldn't be seen clearly. But it was clear that this black shadow was also a little baffled by the situation in front of it. Because it didn't see anyone, that Miss Little Liang isn't here. Wu Yuanji, who was in the form of a black shadow, was full of questions. He suspected that he had come to the wrong place, but this was clearly the witness protection room, and it was in use at that. If she wasn't here, where could she have gone? Are you looking for me? Just as Wu Yuanji was full of doubts, a delicate and tender voice came over. It sounded like a little girl's voice, and it was obviously a young Lolita's voice. Wu Yuanji carefully scanned his surroundings and confirmed that there was no one here. There was also no one who used a Lolita voice as a voice actress to trick a rich otaku into tipping 100,000 yuan. The lesson from that live broadcast incident was quite tragic. Wu Yuanji even wanted to defend the rich otaku who had been tricked. The trauma of the soul was sometimes much greater than the physical damage. Are you here for me? Just as Wu Yuanji was confused, the loli's voice sounded again. Wu Yuanji followed the sound and searched the room for a moment. Finally, he confirmed that the sound came from the fish tank in front of him. In the fish tank, there was no fish. A small cockroach was looking up at him. Cockroach! Wu Yuanji was stunned by the scene before him. He was considering the possibility of a problem. Could that legendary Miss Little Liang be? Are you looking for Miss Little Liang? I'm Little Liang. Miss Little Liang's antennae trembled as she gazed at the black shadow. Cockroaches had a natural fondness for shadows, so the moment Miss Little Liang saw Wu Yuanji, she didn't feel the slightest bit afraid. On the contrary, she felt a strange affinity for him. Recovering from his shock, Wu Yuanji laughed wildly in his heart. Crazy. This bunch of people had really gone crazy. They were actually using a cockroach as a witness. How could the application for a witness be approved by such an unreasonable request? But since Wu Yuanji was already here, he naturally couldn't make a wasted trip. Since he had already confirmed that this cockroach was the legendary Miss Little Liang, then, please go to hell, Miss Little Liang. Wu Yuanji had already killed a lot of people who had gotten in his way, so he naturally wouldn't feel any pity for a mere 2-year-old cockroach. The shadow he had turned into began to riot with an extremely vicious expression. Before his palm even landed, a wave of spiritual pressure had already turned into a powerful gust of wind. Bang! The fish tank was directly shattered. Miss Little Yang withstood the enormous spiritual pressure. She felt like she was about to die, and was in a state where she was on the brink of death, and soon fell unconscious. Lowly creature. Wu Yuanji withdrew his palm and sneered disdainfully. It was just a cockroach. If he couldn't even deal with a cockroach, then he, the devil's lawyer, shouldn't be able to survive in the cultivation world. But just as Wu Yuanji was about to leave, the seemingly dead Miss Little Yang actually came back to life. Her antennae twitched, and then she actually flipped over and came back to life. It hurts. I'm only 2 years old, still a child. Can you not use so much force? Why can't we talk things out? Miss Little Yang protested. She was actually still alive. The corners of Wu Yuanji's mouth twitched. Without the slightest hesitation, he slapped Miss Little Yang again. This time, he was sure that he had hit Miss Little Yang. Even a cultivator wouldn't be able to withstand this slap of his. Anyone below the soul formation stage would die on the spot if they were hit directly on the top of their heads. Humph, a mere cockroach still dared to be so arrogant. Wu Yuanji moved his palm away. It was as if he could already see Miss Little Yang's miserable state. It was just a cockroach, he had probably already smashed it into a meat patty, right? Wu Yuanji sneered. However, Miss Little Yang, who had already been flattened, actually bulged up like an inflatable doll and came back to life. Hey! I told you not to use so much force, it's against the law, the protection of minors. Miss Little Yang protested. Wu Yuanji was alarmed by such a tenacious fatality, so the undying cockroach's telepathic message was true. Were cockroaches really unkillable creatures? Wu Yuanji clutched his head, he felt like his worldview was about to collapse. But the truth was that only Miss Little Yang had such a strong vitality, because she was the descendant of cockroach Wenqiang. And what kind of cockroach was cockroach Wenqiang? This was the strongest cockroach that had grown up eating the leftovers of Wang Ling's crispy noodle snacks. The descendants of the strongest cockroach naturally inherited its ability to withstand beatings. Furthermore, Miss Little Yang's strong ability to withstand beatings astonished all the police officers at the police station. Thanks to Miss Little Yang stalling for time, they had already set up a barrier around the entire room while Wu Yuanji had been killing her. They had even cut off the power. The moment the light in the room dimmed, Wu Yuanji, who had turned into a yin state, realized that this was a trap. He was trapped. Gao Tian and Odd Zhua had been waiting at the door for a long time, ready to pull in the net. Odd Zhua, Lawyer Wu, you can't escape. Gao Tian, Lawyer Wu, we will prosecute you for destroying evidence, animal abuse, and cultivating a forbidden spell. You can remain silent. But everything you say will be used as evidence in court. Chapter 1054. On the other side, Fu Fuxing was still waiting in the detention center. Instead of good news, he received the news that Wu Yuanji had been caught alive on the spot. Fu Fuxing instantly felt all his hopes turn to dust. According to the police officers in the detention center, Fu Fuxing's hair had turned a lot white that night. Wu Yuanji had also been put in spirit shackles, and his shadow form had been removed on the spot. When Gao Tian asked Wu Yuanji how he could display such power, Wu Yuanji's answer shocked everyone present. Frozen dumplings. I ate a bag of frozen dumplings, Wu Yuanji said. Frozen dumplings again. Chief Xiao's eyes widened. After hearing Jing Tianxiang's confession, he had gone to buy a bag that night. And it was broccoli-flavored frozen dumplings produced by the Office of Strategic Deception. This bag of frozen dumplings was more expensive than broccoli produced by the Office of Strategic Deception. You might as well buy some broccoli and mash it up to make your own dumplings. What's the filling of the dumplings? Even Gao Tian couldn't help being curious. San Xian. I remember its infant formula, nutritious dumplings for pregnant women, said Wu Yuanji. Why are you eating this? Are you pregnant? Little Silver had a surprised look on his face. My firm also needs to support people. I bought these frozen dumplings in the returned goods section, and they were cheap. Returned goods section again, Gao Tian lowered his head in thought. Returned goods section, frozen dumplings, and nutritious dumplings for pregnant women. The basic information was exactly the same as what Father Zheng had confessed back then. Could it be that some manufacturer had experimented with these frozen dumplings and added illegal drugs? Gao Tian thought of one possibility. It was everyone's responsibility to investigate drugs and illicit drugs, which was something that people all over the world should be responsible for and concerned about. How many families had been destroyed because of these drugs and illicit drugs, and how many anti-drug police officers had been sacrificed on the front lines because of these hateful drug dealers? The crackdown on drugs and illicit drugs should be a national boycott campaign. And new drugs were now emerging endlessly on the market. If someone really used frozen dumplings to make this kind of confusing drug, it would simply be outrageous behavior. Immediately investigate the dumplings thoroughly. It was clear that Chief Xiao had also realized the seriousness of the problem, and he couldn't sit still. But when Zhuo heard about frozen dumplings for pregnant women, a hesitant expression appeared on his face. He remembered that his Shifu's mother, Master Wang, had gotten pregnant a while ago, and it seemed that she had bought a lot of things from the cultivation department store, and frozen dumplings had been on the list. When he had visited the Wang family's small villa before, Mother Wang had been returning the goods because she had bought too many things, and Zhuo remembered that a box of frozen dumplings had been loaded into the truck. So in the return area, there was a box of frozen dumplings that had been in the Wang family's small villa. As for whether this box of frozen dumplings had anything to do with the dumplings that Wu Yuanji and Father Zheng had eaten, Zhuo wasn't sure. It can't be such a coincidence, right? Actually, Zhuo was still a little scared. He recorded this matter and planned to send a message to his master to confirm. He knew that his master loved to enchant things for him to play with. If this frozen dumpling was really enchanted by his master, then everything made sense. After eating the frozen dumplings enchanted by his Shifu, it would be strange if his realm didn't rise quickly. It would be fine if the sudden increase in combat power was used in the right way, but if it was used by people like Wu Yuanji who wanted to use the sudden increase in power to do things that violated the law, not only would it bring trouble to society, but the police station would also be busy. During the interrogation that night, Wu Yuanji confessed to all of his crimes. He had been caught red-handed, and Gao Tian's law enforcement recorder had recorded it on the spot, as well as Miss Little Liang's disability report. Wu Yuanji couldn't defend himself even if he wanted to. Wu Yuanji might be facing a sentence of up to 100 years. This demon of the legal world had stirred up trouble for so long by relying on his knowledge and ruthless methods, but in the end, he couldn't escape the punishment of the law. The next day was September 20th, which was the 37th day of the summer break. Fu Fuxing appeared in court alone. He didn't have a defense lawyer. Because of Wu Yuanji's arrest and the fact that Fu Fuxing had hired Wu Yuanji, the public enemy of the legal world, when Fu Fuxing once again requested to change his defense lawyer, there wasn't a single lawyer in the entire legal circle in Songhai City who was willing to step forward to help him fight this case. Similarly, Miss Little Liang's appearance also shocked the entire cultivation world. When Wang Ling got up in the morning, the class chat group had indeed exploded with chatter. Letting a cockroach act as a witness, no one would have thought that this kind of thing would actually happen. A cockroach. Is that for real? Did my prophecy come true? Super Chen exclaimed. A while ago, he had mentioned that there might be some cockroach or other insects at home who might have seen what had happened. Who would have thought that a cockroach would actually appear in court to testify? Because it was a public trial, a lot of people directly took screenshots of the live stream and sent them to the group. When everyone saw Miss Little Yang state the facts in court with 2 antennae on her head, they actually couldn't help laughing. Why does this cockroach look a little cute? I've always thought cockroaches were disgusting. Maybe it's because this little cockroach has a Lolita voice. A Lolita voice, sure enough, this was an evil thing. Some people used it to swindle money, and some cockroaches used it to act cute. At that moment, Teacher Pan couldn't help speaking in the group. Students, the facts prove that all living things are equal to begin with. As long as the conservation of living things is maintained, even cockroaches will help humanity develop. This is a very dramatic event, and it's worth all of us thinking about it. Since that's the case, students, teacher will give you another assignment. Everyone, write an essay of no less than 800 words on the topic of cockroaches and humans. The theme must be clear, the idea must be clear, and the positive energy must be promoted. This will demonstrate the special bond and friendship between living things. The class chat group instantly fell into an awkward silence. Teacher Pan wasn't happy. Students, why aren't you saying anything? Do you think the words in the essay are too few? How about this, the first 5 students who raised their hands to answer only need to write 800 words, and the rest of you must write at least 2,000 words. Seeing this, Wang Ling instantly replied with an ellipsis. Very good, congratulations to the first person to write an 800-word essay, Student Wang Ling. Teacher Pan nodded in satisfaction. F***K. Wang Ling, I knew you were spying on us. I've never seen your hand speed so fast before. Super Chen couldn't help ridiculing. Chapter 1055. In the end, in the second trial, Fu Fuxing admitted that he had relied on Jing Jingshuan's early works to plagiarize the competition, and at the same time, he exposed the biggest mastermind behind the scenes, Lu Yi. Lu Yi was already dead, and dead people didn't have to bear criminal responsibility, but that didn't mean that civil compensation couldn't be made. Father Zheng's request was very simple. He wanted Raven Studio, which was led by Lu Yi and Fu Fuxing, to compensate for all the illegal profits from student Zheng's early magic treasure designs, a total of 365 million yuan, as well as to publicly apologize to the deceased Jing Jingxian and restore his reputation. At the same time, Father Zheng also requested that the compensation be used as a supplementary prize for the Magic Treasure Design competition, and called it the Jingxian Prize, to encourage participants who could truly design original magic treasures. The above claims were also upheld by the court on the spot. Chief Judge Liang Xian made the final decision. At last, this plagiarism case that had left the Jing family uneasy finally turned around on September 21, 3 years later, on the 38th day of the summer break. The police officers in charge of the case back then, as well as the judge and the jury, all received disciplinary warnings. They had made a wrong ruling when the facts weren't clear and the evidence wasn't sufficient, which was a fact that the Jing family had been troubled. On the other hand, this also proved that justice was fair, and reflected the courage to admit one's mistakes and to find out the truth. The wrongful case from 3 years ago came to an end, and Father Zheng's family's troubles were resolved. But for Wang Ling, the Wang family's troubles had just begun. He received a text message from Audiobook. It was about the frozen dumplings that Father Zheng and that demon lawyer Wu Yuanji had both mentioned. Because Chief Xiao, the head of the General Police Department, suspected that someone had disguised the dumpling fillings with drugs, he was paying a lot of attention to the origin of the frozen dumplings. Wang Ling couldn't help but raise his guard. What was certain at the moment was that Mother Wang had indeed bought frozen dumplings suitable for pregnant women a while ago, but because it had been an impulsive purchase, she had later returned some of the goods when she came to her senses. This included the box of frozen dumplings. Wang Ling's great enchantment spell had the power to turn something rotten into something magical. He had enchanted a tricycle, a microwave oven, a toilet, and a while ago, he had even enchanted his bedroom door. But he wouldn't be so bored as to enchant a bag of frozen dumplings with such a mystical heavenly Tao spell. The dumplings were perfectly fine. Why did he have to enchant them? So what if he was enlightened? Would it become as crispy noodle snacks after being enlightened? Would a water margin hero card appear from eating dumplings? No. Since it wasn't possible, why did he still need to enlighten it? But he paid particular attention to the origin of these dumplings. He felt that it was necessary to investigate what had happened to this box of frozen dumplings that had been delivered to the small villa. He summed up the changes in Father Zhang and Wu Yuanji after eating the frozen dumplings. First, there was the abnormal growth in the realm. After eating the dumplings, almost all of them reached the nascent soul stage. He had directly crossed an entire realm. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to cultivate from the golden core stage to the nascent soul stage without hundreds of years of cultivation. Secondly, and most importantly, the powers that Jing Tianxiang and Wu Yuanji obtained were all related to the shadow, so there might be some kind of connection between them. And Wang Ling very quickly thought of a possibility. At the same time, in order to confirm his guess, Wang Ling quickly replied to Audua. He needed to confirm his theory further, which was that he had to get close to Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang. But he couldn't go in person. He was just a 16-year-old high school student. Even if Audua could facilitate his job, if he went to the police station to meet a criminal, it might have a negative impact on him if he was discovered. So, Wang Ling thought of a special method. On the other side, Audua stared at his phone as he read Wang Ling's astonishing reply. His eyes were filled with astonishment. Possession. That was right. In order to get close to Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianxiang, Wang Ling decided to use an old-fashioned method, possession from a distance. This was a heavenly Tao spell based on the Great Soul Fusion spell, and Wang Ling could freely choose a person to possess. But at the same time, this spell was very risky. Apart from blood relatives or people with a high degree of rapport, it would be risky for Wang Ling to possess anyone else. This was because not everybody with an excessively powerful soul could withstand Wang Ling's torment. It wasn't hard to imagine a body bursting if it couldn't withstand such a powerful soul. The reason why he chose Audua was very simple. Audua had been his disciple for several months, and their relationship could be considered close. Most importantly, it was Wang Ling who had taught Audua the cultivation technique he was currently learning. Thus, Wang Ling judged that it was very unlikely that anything would happen to Audua's body. Furthermore, even if something did happen, Wang Ling could think of a way to reconstruct Audua's body. In any case, they were all on the same side, so it wouldn't matter if something went wrong. But it would be different if he possessed someone else's body. Even if something went wrong, Wang Ling would be able to solve it. It might still cause pain to other people. This was the first time Wang Ling had possessed someone else's body, and also the first time Audua had been possessed by Wang Ling. The last time Audua had been possessed was when he had accepted Jinka's power. In fact, that couldn't be considered a true fusion, and was just a simple form of enchantment. And Audua himself still had his own thoughts and consciousness. But if he possessed him, the situation would be different. While Wang Ling was possessing him, Audua would lose all memory of the time he had been possessed. Thus, when Wang Ling carefully wrote out the precautions for possessing him, he thought that Audua would be afraid of these obvious side effects. Not everyone could withstand the feeling of being possessed by a foreign body. Some people would even experience stress reactions for a very long time after being possessed, such as vomiting, fatigue, higher body temperature, increased frequency of toilet visits, and becoming irritable. That was right, these stress reactions were similar to the early signs of pregnancy. Wang Ling was worried that Audua would refuse, so he explained all the possible side effects clearly to him. But who the hell knew that Audua's reaction seemed to be especially excited? Shifu, when are you coming? GKD Shifu. I can't wait. As your dearest disciple, you must always remember that there will always be a place for you in my body. Chapter 1056. The matter of the magic treasure design case had come to an end, but that didn't mean that Audjua's task was over. The Black Shadow army that had escaped in the Palace of Mirrors was now his primary target to investigate and track down. Huaxiao Alliance had secretly handed this task over to the Office of Strategic Deception, and Audjua was the chief commander representing the Office of Strategic Deception in searching for clues about the Black Shadow army. This organization was far more cunning than Audjua had imagined. Little Silver and Loopy Toad had been working together to search for the aura of the Black Shadow army recently, but to no avail. Even the Lord and Lady of the Castle of the Office of Strategic Deception's Intelligence Department hadn't been able to intercept any valuable clues. It was very obvious that this Black Shadow army had a strict management system to prevent internal information from being accidentally leaked. This was a very tightly managed organization. And behind such a strict management system, there had to be a huge, unspeakable secret. At that moment, Wang Ling was attached to Audjua's body, while his real body was in standby mode. In standby mode, it was as if Wang Ling had been implanted with an AI system to do some of the things he usually did, which was a little similar to an intelligent takeover state. Fortunately, Wang Ling didn't usually speak much, so even in this takeover state, there wasn't too much of a contrast. It was just that in this takeover mode, Wang Ling wouldn't take the initiative to attack if he encountered danger, and would instead passively defend himself. In layman's terms, he wouldn't fight back if he was hit. He just wanted to get close to Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianchang in Audjua's body to see if their current situation matched up with what he had guessed. It wouldn't take too long, and Wang Ling felt that it wouldn't be a big deal if he left his real body for a while. This was Wang Ling's first time in Audjua's body. Audjua was slightly taller than Wang Ling, and had the body of a fully developed adult. It was just that when he had just entered Audjua's body, Wang Ling suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his back. This was a protruding lumbar disc. It was an occupational disease that had arisen from Audjua's work after he became the director of the General Administration of 100 schools. Cultivators also had protruding lumbar discs, which were very difficult to treat. Cultivators had higher bone density than ordinary people to begin with, so it was very painful to press the protruding part back into place after a protruding lumbar disc. Audjua usually suffered from the pain of a protruding lumbar disc, but now that Wang Ling was in his body, Audjua's soul could rest for a short while. Being an adult is really tough, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. The two souls shared one body, and Wang Ling's soul took over Audjua's body. After losing control of his body, Audjua no longer felt the pain of a protruding disc, but he still felt it. Shifu, I don't think I can move my body. Have you already come in? Wang Ling. Don't use this kind of ambiguous question. Master. Master. Audjua continued to ask relentlessly. Helpless, Wang Ling could only answer, phew. Audjua heaved a sigh of relief. Well, is it comfortable in my body, Wang Ling? Audjua, no. I mean, is Shifu used to using my body? He knew that he had a protruding disc, even though he was relaxed in this state of soul liberation. But she was still worried that he wouldn't be used to his body. The biggest problem with a protruding disc was that the bones in his waist would bulge out bit by bit as he walked, so Audjua had to straighten his waist every time he walked to push the protruding bones back a little. In fact, after the trial of the magic treasure plagiarism case, Audjua's protruding disc had flared up again. He had been lying in bed at home, resting with a piece of soft jade that gave off a cold aura around his waist. Generally speaking, the pain caused by a protruding disc would lessen a lot if he lay down for half an hour. But Wang Ling realized that he couldn't delay any longer. He directly manipulated Audjua's body to teleport to a thicket near Songhai First Prison, and then walked out of it. This wasn't Audjua's first time here, and returning to the prison felt like returning home. Seeing that it was Audjua, the guards at the gate opened the gate one after another without even checking his ID. There were scanners at the prison gates to prevent people from changing their appearance and sneaking in. They could even detect true immortals. Thus, it was almost impossible for someone to disguise themselves as Audjua and sneak into the prison. Only an almighty like Wang Ling, who possessed heavenly Tao, wouldn't give himself away. Director Zhua, you're here again. I've already tidied up the guest room for you. If you're busy today, you can directly stay in there. Wang Ling was stunned. There was actually a private guest room for Audjua in this prison. It seemed that the relationship between Warden Liang and Audjua was indeed extraordinary. The truth was that Warden Liang had always held Audjua in the highest regard. Audjua's performance was linked to Songhai First Prisons. Now that more and more bigwigs had been arrested and sent to Songhai First Prison, the reputation of the prison and Warden Liang's reputation in the outside world had been boosted by several halos. The salaries of all the prison staff had also increased substantially. So when everyone saw Audjua arrive, they all had smiles on their faces. Wang Ling wasn't good at smiling, but in order not to give himself away, he used Audjua's body to make several fake smiles in a row. Although they looked fake, at least he managed to bluff his way through. In the special prison cell, the old devil, master of Immortal Mansion Qing Yu and Evil Sword God were still locked up together. Father Zhang and Wu Yuanji, who had just been detained, were locked up in separate high-class cells. These two were high-class prisoners, and after the first trial, Father Zhang was finally sentenced to 8 years in prison, which could already be considered a light punishment. Furthermore, Father Zhang's repentance was pretty good, and he and Wu Yuanji were locked up separately, so the conditions around them weren't too bad. As for Wu Yuanji, he was very miserable. Although it was also a high-class cell, Wu Yuanji's cell was heavily guarded. This devil's lawyer had once relied on his own strength to free a lot of prisoners who had originally been facing heavy sentences. The prison guards of Songhai First Prison had held a deep grudge against Wu Yuanji in those years. Now that Wu Yuanji had been arrested, he would naturally receive some special, preferential treatment. Wu Yuanji. A prison guard walked into Wu Yuanji's cell. In order to satisfy the mental needs of the 3 special felons in the special prison cell, and to prevent them from suffering from mental illness in the prison's enclosed environment for a long time, you are now required to play mahjong with them for an hour every day. Wu Yuanji, when he reached the entrance of the special prison cell, he saw 2 prison guards carrying a prisoner covered with a white cloth out of the cell. The prisoner was about to be sent for emergency treatment. Wu Yuanji, this is. Prison guard, the last one to play mahjong with them. Wu Yuanji, prison guard, don't try to play tricks while playing mahjong. Otherwise, you'll be the next one to be carried out. Wu Yuanji. Chapter 1057. Using Audjua's body, Wang Ling felt that it was much more convenient to do things in prison. Audjua was like a free pass, and he could go anywhere he wanted. Even in the special prison area, he didn't need to report to Warden Liang, he just needed to let the prison guards know. This wasn't a violation of the rules, since it was Audjua who had captured the old devil and his group in the official news report, so it was understandable for him to visit them. Wang Ling decided to go see Father Zhang first. Father Zhang was naturally in a very good mood now that his grievances had been cleared. Even if he had to go to jail, he would accept it. The prison had already prepared a job for Father Zhang. If he worked hard, he might be able to get out earlier with a reduced sentence. Wang Ling met Father Zhang in a factory inside the prison, where he was pouring talisman paper pulp into a machine. This was a talisman factory, and Father Zhang and his fellow prisoners were working on producing talisman paper for drawing talismans. Talismans were a necessity in the cultivation world, and billions of talisman paper were consumed every day. Most of these were cleaning talismans or purification talismans, and so on, which were used to keep the city clean and filter out poisonous particles in the air, in order to restore freshness to the city and give the citizens a blue sky. To maintain such a large consumption, the production of talisman paper was very important. Thus, 90% of the talisman paper consumed every day was basically produced by prisoners working day and night in various prisons across the country. Talismans like the cleaning talisman were relatively cheap to make, and didn't need to be made of very good paper. It was best to reduce costs and maintain the environment. If they used a large processing plant to import high-grade talisman paper instead, it would be like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. Of course, apart from producing talisman paper, Father Zheng's most important task was to draw talismans. Father Zheng was currently the person with the highest realm in this factory, and he also had some experience in drawing talismans. Not only could he produce thousands of simple talismans like the cleaning talisman in a day, he could also teach his fellow prisoners how to draw them. This way, the prison wouldn't have to hire someone to draw them, and would save a lot of money. Father Zheng's move not only saved the prison money, it could also be considered a way for his fellow prisoners to make a living. After they got out of prison, they definitely wouldn't be jobless. As long as they could draw cleaning talismans, they could join a talisman processing company to make money. Although the salary was not high, it was not a problem for him to support himself. Moreover, as long as one was willing to work in a talisman processing company, one could try to draw higher-level talismans. After a long time, one could also be promoted. Thus, Warden Liang was naturally happy to see this result. This month, it was likely that the red flags of all the major prisons would stop at his Songhai First Prison. When Wang Ling arrived at the processing plant, he saw Father Zheng working hard from a distance. "Director Zhua, should I bring Jing Tinqiang over to you?" asked a prison guard who was supervising the factory. "Shifu, just wave your hand." Awed Zhua's voice sounded. Wang Ling made a hand gesture in accordance with Awed Zhua's words. The prison guard quickly understood what he meant, and after nodding at Awed Zhua, he quickly retreated. He didn't get too close to Jing Tinqiang. This distance was enough for him to use his soul sense to explore. Standing on the spot, Wang Ling frowned deeply at the information he had obtained from Jing Tinqiang. It was very clear that Father Zheng's newly awakened strength wasn't his own, but an external force. This force was very similar to the shock wave from Mother Wang's fetal movement in the Wang family's small villa. Was it An Wan who had given them strength? Wang Ling never thought that his little sister would actually be stronger than he had imagined. Mother Wang had been pregnant for less than a month, but she already had self-awareness and had even given outsiders strength. And this strength had probably spread from the box of frozen dumplings. This was a surprising result. What a naughty little sister, but at least Wang Ling now knew how his little sister Wang Wan could give others strength. Why did she have to start with frozen dumplings? This was enough to prove that An Wan's current strength couldn't be directly bestowed, and could only be used indirectly. For example, she could inject her own energy into a bag of frozen food, and the person who ate it would become the inheritor of this strength. Apart from this, Wang Ling also realized that Father Zheng and Wu Yuanji's strength had something in common with their shadows. It was as if their shadows had been endowed with some kind of consciousness, and could interact with their bodies in some way. This was also the reason why Father Zheng and Wu Yuanji could borrow the power of shadows to travel back and forth between computer screens. But it was very clear that while shadows were powerful, Father Zheng and Wu Yuanji's awakening wasn't complete. They had been bestowed with the power of shadows, but hadn't been able to unleash their true strength. Using shadows to travel back and forth between screens was just a routine operation. Just as Wang Ling was about to probe deeper with his spiritual senses, a hidden murderous intent came from outside the prison. Songhai First Prison. Ever since the last time Shadow Stream people had broken through the walls to escape, the high walls and barrier around the prison had been reinforced. Not everyone could enter the prison as easily as Awed Zhua. At that moment, someone was looking down at Songhai First Prison from high ground. Baiyu was dressed entirely in white, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. Everyone, our mission this time is only Jing Tianqiang and Wu Yuanji. Everyone must capture these two alive. After returning from the world of the Palace of Mirrors, the Black Shadow Army had been waiting for the data on the Shadow Wave. They had divided their strength to monitor Wang Ling's family villa, but they never expected the Shadow Wave to suddenly shift and appear on Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianqiang. Bai Yuquan was overjoyed at this discovery. As long as they could capture these two people with the Shadow Wave, there was hope for them to revitalize their force. Unfortunately, Wu Yuanji and Jing Tianqiang, these two idiots, didn't know how to thoroughly activate their formidable power. Prison break, this was tantamount to declaring war. The Black Shadow Army had been quiet for a long time after leaving the world of the Palace of Mirrors. They had been waiting for the right time to announce their force to the world. And now, the opportunity had come. Shadow Brute, it's your turn. Bai Yuquan said softly. In the crowd, a shadow giant that was 5 or 6 meters tall appeared. His feet shook the ground, and his entire body was wreathed in black shadows. Holding 2 shadow axes in his hands, he directly raised them and charged at the front gate of the prison at Bai Yuquan's command. At the same time, Songhai First Prison's most advanced alarm system broke the silence of the night as the shadow giant attacked the gate. Chapter 1058. The sudden attack instantly put Songhai First Prison on the highest alert. Even though the external defense was impregnable, Bai Yuquan had definitely come prepared since he had dared to launch an attack at this time. Thanks to the special power of Destiny Dao, the Black Shadow Army was stronger than cultivators of ordinary realms to begin with. Coupled with the existence of Shadow Brute, this was a powerful siege weapon which Bai Yuquan had specially designed. Shadow Brute wasn't a real human, but a manifestation of the power of Destiny Dao. It was shaped like a black shadow and built like a mythical giant, and it gave off a powerful sense of oppression. Under the cover of the black shadow, a chilly wind blew in the face, stirring up the clouds and wind. Team 1, defend. Team 1, defend. Team 2, attack. The entire prison has entered the highest defense mode. Close the cages. Prevent the prisoners from escaping. It had happened suddenly, but fortunately, under Warden Liang's guidance, Songhai First Prison had already taken the appropriate precautions. The prison guards performed their respective duties and immediately launched the first round of defense against Bai Yuquan's Black Shadow Army. Some people made hand signs to strengthen the barrier, and some people escaped from the secret exit of the barrier to fight the Black Shadow Army. They only had one task, and that was to stop the enemy's attack in the shortest time possible and kill all the enemy's malice in the cradle. The purpose of attacking the prison was nothing more than to free the prisoners, and the other party's objective for choosing this time to attack was actually very clear. It was likely that they were after that demon lawyer Wu Yuanji and Father Jing Tianqiang. Warden Liang knew that the situation wasn't good, and immediately rushed to the front line to direct the battle. Standing at the entrance to the prison, he snapped his fingers and changed into the warden's custom-made leather combat suit. Have you determined the number of invaders? Lord Warden, there are a lot of them. There are no less than 100 of them. This is a well-prepared invasion. Warden Liang immediately frowned. Call the city police station immediately and ask for reinforcements from the nearest Immortal Arts mobile squad. Yes. After doing all this, Warden Liang's gaze turned to the giant Shadow Brute, who was trying to tear the barrier apart. As the warden, he could tell at a glance that this big guy was probably the most difficult person to deal with. Netherworld chains. With a wave of his hand, 2 chains instantly shot out of the crack in the air like swimming dragons. Following Warden Liang's will, the chains instantly climbed onto Shadow Brute's hands and feet and firmly held it back. Success. As expected of the warden. The crowd was in high spirits. Warden Liang's participation immediately raised the morale of the prison guards and warriors present. The netherworld flame on the netherworld chain has the ability to devour spiritual energy. I heard that the spirit shackles were developed based on the netherworld chain. This big guy probably won't be able to escape now, someone said. Let's charge together. Take down these invaders in one fell swoop. The prison guards brandished their immortal swords with chains in their hands and launched an all-out assault on the Black Shadow army. But everyone never noticed the figure of the mastermind behind this battle, Bai Yuquan. The current situation seemed to be the defeat of the Black Shadow army, but in fact, everything was under Bai Yuquan's control. The prison combative police regiment, made up of prison guards from all over the country, was a more mature combat police force than the Immortal Arts Mobile Squad, and was currently the strongest official combat group under Huaxiao Alliance apart from the Special Forces. Bai Yuquan had wanted to test the strength of the prison combative police force, but the result was more disappointing than he had imagined. Bai Yuquan sighed softly, then murmured softly, "There's no time to play these family games, Shadow Brute." Although his voice wasn't loud, it seemed to give Shadow Brute an even more powerful ability, and the instant Bai Yuquan's voice fell, all the Black Shadow army fell into a frenzy. The netherworld chain is about to break. Warden Liang turned pale with fright. He never thought that the situation, which had originally been in his grasp, would actually collapse in an instant. Bang! The netherworld chain was torn apart by Shadow Brute's tremendous strength. In a split second, an explosive power was released, and countless prison guards were sent flying in all directions like ants. The Black Shadow army's attack was going smoothly, but no one noticed the person observing them from behind the scenes, Wang Ling. Bai Yuquan had escaped last time, and now that he had shown up again after much difficulty, Wang Ling absolutely wouldn't miss this rare opportunity to learn. That was right, as a special Great Dao, Wang Ling hadn't mastered Fate Dao. The last time he had learned Divine Dao, it had only been the blink of an eye. But Fate Dao was more special, and Wang Ling needed more time to comprehend it. And the best way to comprehend it was to observe the possessor of Fate Dao up close. Thus, after observing quietly for about 2 minutes, Wang Ling's tightly furrowed brows finally relaxed again. Furthermore, he gave his own assessment of this great Dao of fate. Fortunately, it's not particularly difficult. Shifu, the situation isn't looking good. While Wang Ling was studying, Audiobook was extremely anxious. Seeing that the prison barrier was about to be broken, Audiobook's heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Don't panic," Wang Ling comforted him. Then, he took a step forward and instantly teleported to the center of the battlefield. The first thing Wang Ling had to do naturally wasn't to kill the enemy. Instead, it was to protect the prison guards. Fortunately, he had learned Fate Dao quickly. Although the prison guards were at a disadvantage, it wasn't an irremediable situation yet. Some of the prison guards had been injured and had fainted on the battlefield. Wang Ling crooked his finger and gathered all the unconscious guards together. At the same time, he cast the great healing spell to instantly heal all their internal and external injuries. In the distance, Bai Yuquan was stupefied when he saw Audiobook suddenly appear. This wasn't his first time dealing with Audiobook, but Bai Yuquan could never have imagined that Audiobook would have such powerful magic power. While he was pondering this, Wang Ling, who was in the air, opened his pure white palm once again. The lines on his palm actually changed in an instant to form a high-level magic array which fell from the sky on the spot to cover all the combat guards. This was a magic array that no one had ever seen before. The runes on it were so obscure and advanced that even Warden Liang was stunned. He never expected Audiobook to actually be such a secretive person. "Director Zhua, what is this magic array?" asked Warden Liang. Wang Ling borrowed Audiobook's voice to answer, "Big Dipper Bloodlock Array." "What the hell? Bloodlock Array?" Warden Liang felt that he had never heard of this array before. But at that moment, one of Shadow Brute's sharp claws suddenly pierced Warden Liang's stomach. A huge, bloody hole appeared in Warden Liang's belly. With blood flowing and his internal organs destroyed, Warden Liang was logically dead. But then came the problem: Warden Liang actually didn't feel any pain at all. Chapter 1059. The Big Dipper Bloodlock Array. It was one of the branches of the Great Bloodlock spell, one of the 30,000 heavenly Dao that Wang Ling had mastered. Combined with the Great Array spell, it was possible to achieve the instantaneous effect of fusing a spell and array. It was this Great Array spell that gave the lines on Wang Ling's palm a soul-like consciousness the instant it fell, and it swiftly outlined the array that Wang Ling wanted to set up. Then, Wang Ling only needed to press his palm down, and the array would be complete. Shadow Brute was one of the incarnations of Fate Dao, and was extremely difficult to deal with. Warden Liang was very strong, but he still wasn't Shadow Brute's match in terms of true fighting strength. But Wang Ling was well aware that as an incarnation of Heavenly Dao, Shadow Brute didn't have a strong endurance. Once it ran out of energy, it would have to go back and replenish itself, like recharging. It was precisely because of this that Wang Ling had instantly grasped its weakness. There were so many people in the prison combative police regiment that it would be too conspicuous to use the clone spell to provide one-on-one support, so Wang Ling decided to use the Great Bloodlock spell to create an opportunity. There was no Heavenly Dao more durable than the Great Bloodlock spell. According to the rules, this Heavenly Dao consumed spirit energy every minute and every second, but Wang Ling's primordial qi could be described as inexhaustible. In the end, there were very few freaks like Wang Ling in this world who could ignore energy consumption. No need to panic, everyone. Director Zhuo must have anticipated this situation and set up the array in advance. We're all currently in a state of bloodlock, so we won't feel any pain. Take this opportunity to capture all these intruders. Warden Liang roared, and the prison combative police instantly regained their fiery fighting spirit as their fighting spirit was reignited. In the air, Wang Ling watched Bai Youquan's figure from afar. This time, he was using Audiobook's body, so he didn't need to worry about who would be the scapegoat. In addition, this was also beneficial to Audiobook himself. While he was in Wang Ling's body, Audiobook could actually learn a lot of combat skills, such as the angle at which Wang Ling slapped him. Audiobook was also able to sense Wang Ling's movements up close while he was in Wang Ling's body. Normally, he probably wouldn't even have been able to see Wang Ling's movements clearly. Audiobook's heart surged with emotion at this immensely rewarding close-range instruction. He had never thought that one day his body would actually be able to release such a powerful Heavenly Dao spell. This Audiobook is even stronger than in the news reports. Bai Youquan was also shocked by Audiobook's sudden attack. He had investigated Audiobook and found that he was a solid golden core cultivator. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to use such a powerful Heavenly Dao spell. But if Audiobook really was that strong, this attack actually hadn't been a loss. At least they had figured out a potentially powerful enemy. Why not try again? To see how awesome this Audiobook was. Bai Youquan suddenly felt a burst of excitement in his heart. He came up with a bold idea. Wang Ling operated Audiobook's body. Although he hadn't been used to the problem of a protruding disc in the beginning, after a period of getting used to it, he had already completely accepted the configuration of this body. Although it was a far cry from his own body, in any case, this was his disciple's body, and it wasn't as bad as he had imagined. King's eye, Wang Ling raised his fingers and drew a line across his pupil. In a flash, his left eye turned fiery red, and even his pupil split into a three-petaled golden flower. Wang Ling was worried that Audiobook's body wouldn't be able to withstand the full power of the King's eye, so he only used half of its power. But even half was already fierce enough. Chi! In the air, Wang Ling turned into a beam of golden light as he charged at Bai Youquan. A powerful destructive force swept through the air, creating a deep gully in the ground as he moved. Bai Yuchuan's eyes twitched at such a powerful destructive force, but it was clear that he wasn't an ordinary person. The moment Wang Ling's body passed through him, Bai Yuquan completed his shadow transformation and his body became transparent. Was it the power of shadows again? Wang Ling was now 100% certain that this new Black Shadow army was inextricably linked to his unborn younger sister, Wang Yuan. Thinking back to how this group of people had retreated so cleanly in the Palace of Mirrors, not leaving a single trace behind, Wang Ling now recalled that it had actually been at that time that Mother Wang had become pregnant with Wang Yuan. Was there really such a coincidence in this world? Wang Ling was aware of the gravity of this matter. They actually dared to set their sights on Yuan. Aren't these people a little too daring? Wang Ling didn't want to be a siscon, but as an older brother, he had to fulfill his responsibility to protect his little sister. Bai Yuquan, he had to catch this person and then ferret out the mastermind behind all of this. He remembered that Wang Ming had mentioned to him about the dream, and that there was an imposter who looked exactly like Wang Ling who was managing everything behind the scenes. Not only had President Bai and Devil Gut Fungus Lord been resurrected, even President Bai's son, Bai Yuquan, had been put in an important position by the other party. It was just that at first, Wang Ling hadn't thought that this imposter's real target would actually be Wang Yuan. You can't hurt me. In his shadow state, Bai Yuquan was completely immune to physical attacks. Wang Ling's attack just now had been fierce, but it hadn't hit him. Wang Ling gave Bai Yuchuan's arrogance a forward evaluation. Out of 100 secrets, one slip-up. When Bai Yuquan came back to his senses, he was astonished to find that a mark had been placed on his soul at some point in time. The physical attack just now had just been a feint. From the very beginning, Wang Ling had been aiming for his soul. The King's Eye Soul Lock. No matter how far you ran, as long as Wang Ling willed it, he could instantly capture the soul shackler and detain him. Even the old devil and evil sword god back then hadn't received this kind of treatment. Wang Ling was too afraid that the other party would run away just like that, and if he let the other party escape this time, who knew when he would get another chance? Compared with investigating on his own, Wang Ling preferred this kind of confident, suicidal behavior. Bai Yuquan had overestimated his strength. At that moment, he saw this terrifying general administration of 100 schools walking toward him step by step. Kneel. Wang Ling stared at Bai Yuquan without the slightest hint of friendliness on his face, but his words were unquestionable. This wasn't a tone of discussion, but a kind of law of heavenly Tao similar to a decree. Once spoken, the law would be enforced. Bai Yuchuan's knees couldn't take the pressure after just saying these two words, and they completely bent and hit the ground heavily. Survey, do you think Wang Ling is a siscon? 1. Yes, please reply. 1, 2, no, please reply. 2. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.